Good afternoon. I'm Jeannie Blaylock here with Jessica Clark, and we are following breaking news out of Georgia right now. In the last 30 minutes, we've learned that 5 soldiers were shot at Fort Stewart Hunter Army Airfield. One person is in custody and multiple people have been wounded.
And take a look at this map. You can see that the base is just north of our southeast Georgia counties, about an hour outside of Savannah. According to a Facebook post by the base, the commander issued a lockdown and everyone is being told to stay indoors. Our ABC News partners in Savannah say the lockdown was put in place just over 2 hours ago, around 11 o'clock. And this is the alert posted online by the Fort Stewart Hunter Army Airfield. It says a lockdown due to that active shooter incident in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area at the Wright Army Airfield. According to our NBC affiliate in Savannah, this is not the main Fort Stewart base. It says the lockdown started shortly after 11 a.m. and law enforcement is on the scene. It says casualties have been reported.
The FBI is releasing a statement. Just minutes ago, we heard this. The FBI Atlanta's Savannah office is aware of the incident at Fort Stewart and is coordinating with Army Criminal Investigation Division for any assistance that might be needed. We want to talk now on the phone with our First Coast News military expert, retired Vice Admiral Rick Snyder, and we've been talking off and on now for the last almost 2 hours. And first of all, what have you been able to find out from your sources?
Well, I am starting to hear that it looks like parts of, if not all of the lockdown have been lifted. There are, in fact, schools on Fort Stewart, and I am hearing that those lockdowns have been lifted, which, of course, is good news and perhaps an indication that they're confident that they've gotten the shooter.
And you called it the shooter, and earlier we talked about the possibility it might be more than one shooter. Are we sure it's just one shooter, or is that still up in the air?
We're not, but if, in fact, those lockdowns have been lifted, that I would be very confident that they believe they've gotten the threat, which in this case looks like it would be one shooter.
And for people who are not familiar with Fort Stewart, we've all heard of Fort Stewart. We've been hearing about it our entire lives and how large this base is. Help us understand the layout here. Wright Army Airfield versus the main part of Fort Stewart. Where did it appear that the active shooter did his damage?
Yeah, it does look like it was near sort of the bottom corner, if you will, southernmost part of the base. Typically, an Army base like this will concentrate much of their facility in one area for ease of, sort of day-to-day administrative. And then their training areas would be spread out, of course, across this much larger, almost 400 square mile base. So, yeah, there is an airfield there. The ABCT combat team area is not that far from it, but it is not that far from the rest of the base.
Vice Admiral Rick Snyder, this is Jessica Clark, and we have heard that 5 soldiers have been shot, and we don't know if that means wounded, if that means have succumbed to their injuries, but we know that 5 soldiers have been shot. What does that indicate to you at all?
Well, clearly whoever perpetrated this was looking to go after soldiers. And in this case, unfortunately, was successful to some extent. The military is, going to report only what they know, which in this case is that the soldiers have been injured at a minimum. So a casualty could be someone injured or killed. And so, we'll just have to wait to see and get updates on the condition of those soldiers, and of course, wish them well and hoping that they all turn out okay.
And sir, the Fort Stewart has released a statement, and it says that there is no longer an active threat to the community. Does that indicate to you that the person that they were able to apprehend is working alone?
That would be the way I would read that.
Yeah.
If they believe that there is no longer an active threat, then clearly they're confident that they have apprehended the person responsible for this.
Now, the person responsible could be military, could be civilian, could be family member. They would all be within the boundaries of the security gates of the military base. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and you and I talked about 2 weeks ago about some active terrorist threats against retired military people in Florida, people who had served in the Middle East. That was Florida, and you said that was a credible threat, and you wanted people to know about that and take extra precaution. This is Georgia. So I know you've worked at the Pentagon, you're in close contact with a lot of sources. Has there been any active terrorist threat for Georgia military bases?
No, certainly nothing specific and that has been put out to the public, which, as we saw in the case in Florida, if there is a credible threat, they're going to notify folks so that they can be more vigilant and aware of the circumstances. So no, I have not seen nor heard of any specific threat to Georgia or Army bases in Georgia.
Sir, so what we're hearing too is that the call came in at 10:56 about at least one person shot at that point. And then at 11:35, the shooter had been apprehended. So from 10:56 to 11:35, that's the amount of time that we're looking at, that if you want to call it an active shooter situation, or at least that there was a shooter and there were people being shot. What does that indicate to you, that period of time? Is that a short amount of time? Is it a long amount of time?
I think that's a relatively short period of time, given the size of the base and an unknown perpetrator in an unknown area. That's a short response.
Okay.
To be able to neutralize that threat.
And you mentioned the size of the base. It is a large base. My understanding is around 10,000 people at least, and sizable. 3rd Infantry works out of there. And so yeah, if you're trying to track down a person with a gun that shouldn't have one and is doing things he shouldn't be doing with it, that is notable.
That's right, and one that doesn't want to be found, presumably.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about what sort of training goes into people on a base being prepared for an active duty or active shooter situation. You have mentioned earlier that the training involves being able to act quickly and precisely.
Yeah, so two types. First, of course, are your security forces, which are separate from your, sort of the day-to-day soldiers doing their Army things. The security forces are specially trained on a day-to-day basis to be the first responders to these circumstances. And so clearly lots of specialized training for them, drills. We, on at least an annual basis, actually go through these exercises to train to them. And then you have the other folks, the soldiers, the civilians, the family members, who also receive regular training on active shooter training. And we're trained in how to respond, which is, of course, first is to leave the situation if you can. Second, hide if you can't. And then only as a last resort to address or try to go after that threat.
And Admiral, we are just seeing now that one is in custody, which would say that person is still alive. And people may be wondering, was he killed as he was shooting other people? But apparently, according to the reports we're getting right now, is that person is still alive and in custody.
Yeah, that would seem to be, if they're in custody, that would certainly make sense.
But the question, I suppose, that we're all sort of trying to avoid because we don't know the answer, and that is for everybody who knows someone at Fort Stewart or they're worried about this, I mean, is the danger over? And can we answer that at this point?
Certainly not definitively, but the fact that they are lifting the lockdown and saying that the shooter has been apprehended, to me, that would mean that the threat is over, at least at this point.
Interesting. And going back to an answer you had just given us about the active shooter training that people at forts and installations like this receive. I think to the layperson, you think of people being trained for active duty overseas, not necessarily where they're living, where they're working, where they're training.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what you would think, but there have been far too many circumstances, both across the country and the civilian society, but also in military bases where we have these active shooter incidents. And so we need to be prepared to respond, and everyone should be prepared to respond. It could be in a mall, it could be at the grocery store or anywhere else. You should always be aware and be thinking, what would do if an emergency situation came up?
Sir, at this point, what are you wanting to know?
Yeah, of course, first of all, who this person is. Are they military? Are they civilian, family member? Who this person is. what, of course, were their motives? Were there other people involved? And then how were they able to get access with lethal force and conduct this attack?
And we don't know if the shooting was inside a building or outside in a training field. I believe you had said that in this brigade training area, there are administrative offices and outside activities. Is that correct?
Yeah, and in this area, most of them are inside. You know, the outdoor training areas are typically several miles away.
So this shooting could have happened inside an area there. And we also found out from you earlier that we know that some of these injured folks were transported. So the hospital is on base, as it is here at some of the bases we have?
That's correct, just like the Navy hospital in Jacksonville. And of course, they would take them there for a first triage and, if necessary, transport them to a higher level of care facility.
Sure. And some of the reporters in Savannah, at the stations in Savannah that really know the hospitals, were reporting that because that is not necessarily a trauma hospital, like a Trauma 1 hospital, that might be a good sign, because if this injuries were more serious, they may have been taken directly to a trauma hospital off the fort.
Yeah, that would, of course, that would make sense.
Okay.
Most of the military hospitals on the installations are not trauma centers, and so a more serious injury would likely have been taken to a higher level of care facility.
Okay.
Our viewers may be wondering what they're seeing. These are live pictures that we have at Fort Stewart. There are trucks and cars driving along a road, and since I'm not from that area, I don't know exactly where this is on the base, but it looks as if there is some sort of activity as normal now.
Yeah, it does kind of look normal, doesn't it? Going in and out.
And I'm seeing a sign there that's Fort Stewart. That might be the entryway
Sure.
of many gates, I'm sure, to this large military base. But again, if you're just joining us, we now have confirmation that 5 people were shot at Fort Stewart. And we know that the shooter is in custody. We don't know about the extent of the casualties, if people have lost their lives or if they're injured, or both, or a mix. But right now we're just monitoring the situation. We know that there were at least 3 schools, 2 elementary schools and a middle school on lockdown. There are schools, as Rick Snyder says, Admiral Snyder, that there are schools on the base. So it's been a very, very nerve-wracking situation. If you look on social media now, which you may or have, I mean, just tons of, my prayers are with them. I'm worried. One woman said, my son is there. Is there any message you want to give to families and people who are just scared about this entire situation? Admiral Snyder?
Yeah, I mean, certainly looking at the same pictures you are, that's a very good sign. That is very much business as usual. It looks like one of the gates, if not the main gate, to Fort Stewart, and people are coming in and out freely. So at this point, pretty clear that the threat is no longer there. And, you know, unfortunately, 5 folks have been either injured, and hopefully that was the extent of the damage. But I think at this point we can be pretty confident that the threat is over.
We do know that that second armored combat area is still on lockdown, though, so you said we should be cautious before we just declare that everything is safe, Lieutenant.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, they're probably going to be doing, you know, the investigative process is most certainly already started, and they want to preserve that area until they can start to gather that evidence and get a better sense of what happened.
But we do want to underline, Admiral, that the main lockdown has been lifted, but it's just not totally
Yeah,
lifted.
and just look at that. It does look like people are going in and out now through that particular gate that we're looking at. So, okay, very interesting. Of course, this is Fort Stewart. This is about an hour outside of Savannah. It is just north of our counties in Georgia that we broadcast to over the air. And so a lot of people in our area, especially if they have connections to the Army, are connected in some shape or fashion to Fort Stewart. Fort Stewart is a big place, and 3rd Infantry works out of there. And so they were instrumental in going into Iraq just after 2001. And so a lot of men and women working out of there. Also, the families of those men and women and servicemen and women living there as well. So there was a shooting. 5 soldiers. We can confirm 5 soldiers have been shot, according to Fort Stewart. We don't know if that is that they have died, that they have been injured. We're still waiting on an update. Memorial Health is the place where they were taken. We're looking at a live shot there. That is the hospital at Fort Stewart, which seems to indicate to at least Admiral Snyder and to other reporters who actually work and live in Savannah that the injuries may not have prompted a trauma situation, because this is not a trauma hospital. It's not a trauma center. There is another hospital in Savannah, about an hour away, that is the trauma center. This right now, we don't like to speculate, but we're just trying to connect the dots, knowing what we know about these particular medical facilities.
Admiral Snyder, let me ask you as well. You were a commanding officer on a naval ship at Mayport. You had a lot of experience there years ago. And the violence was beginning to erupt in bases and schools around the country. What has changed now that makes this more of a threat?
I think part of it is the general desire to go after your own aims. So in other words, people are tending to do things that they think is right, whether they're right or not. So I think that general environment in some cases has raised the temperature and potential for violence. I think that's certainly something to be thinking about. We unfortunately read about these mass shootings far too often here recently. I think some people unfortunately may be seeing that as something that maybe they'll do.
Unfortunately, as you mentioned, becoming all too common, whether it be at a military post or, at a shopping center or a store or a park. We are seeing these particular shootings. I just reached out to somebody who I know has military ties, asked about this. He said, I don't know of anybody there, but gosh, it's just another day, it seems like, with another shooting. And I think to some people that is indeed the case. May we never grow too accustomed to this. We are continuing to gather more information as we learn it. Again, a part of Fort Stewart is still on lockdown, where we understand the shootings took place. We know 5 people have been shot. Those are all soldiers. And we also understand that the rest of Fort Stewart, the military facility there, the majority of the facility has been reopened, if you will. It is no longer on lockdown. This all coming about around 10:56. That was when the 911 call was placed. And by 11:35, the shooter, the suspect, had been apprehended. But it was within those, 40 minutes or so, those 39 minutes, that 5 people had been shot at Fort Stewart. They are there to serve and protect and to train, to go out and then serve in other parts of our world. But evidently, we're also hearing that they also do training just in case situations happen where they are training, like here at Fort Stewart.
And there you see a live look at the gate for Fort Stewart. And as Admiral Snyder has been pointing out, it looks like the activity has resumed. That's good news for most of the base. They're not under lockdown anymore. But this ABCT area that we've been talking about, the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area at the fort, that is still on lockdown as we understand that. And so that means they're investigating, or they think there is still a possibility of something to be worried about. We don't know. But we don't want to make sure, we don't want to say that everything is totally relaxed at that point, because anybody who's connected with this base, I'm sure, is still a little bit on edge.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know a lot of people are wondering about either loved ones, acquaintances, or people who they have encountered and know from Fort Stewart, because it's just simply not that far away from us, about an hour outside of downtown Savannah.
And so many of our young people join the Navy, of course, and a lot of them join the Army. And many go there to Fort Stewart, or you're a veteran, you've been there, you've trained there for years, so you know this area well. And so that's why we hate to hear any news like this at all. We heard there was an active shooter. I think our hearts sank when that came in a little bit before 11 o'clock this morning. And since then, the news has not gotten any better. We know now there are 5 people down, there are 5 casualties. As Admiral Snyder has defined for us in the military, a casualty could mean a death or it could mean an injury. We know that some are transported to the hospital, so hopefully We are hoping and many
Yeah.
people praying that
Yeah.
those soldiers are all going to live and make it through this. But as Admiral Snyder has pointed out, this area, this ABCT area, this brigade training area, has a lot of inside facilities, so that I don't
see,
know how
yes.
large they are. And Admiral Snyder, if you're still on the phone, are we talking about warehouse-style inside areas, or would they be close enough for a shooter to do a lot of harm with a gun if he's close by his perhaps comrades?
Yeah, it would likely be a combination of both warehouse type facilities for equipment storage and then office spaces, classrooms, that kind of thing as well.
And so what does it say to you as far as what we do from now on? I mean, nobody has a solution to any of this at all. But you do a lot of work. You've worked with NORAD. You work with the defense of North America. You know that the internal threat is severe, on our own land, on our own soil. What is being talked about at the highest levels now to do something different? Or is there something different to do?
Well, I think we should need to continue our efforts to make people aware of this potential threat, train and exercise to respond to it, stay vigilant, but then watch out for each other and people's mental health and how they're doing, and encourage people to get help. And if you're dealing with problems, get that help, and so that the professionals out there can make you better. But it's really about vigilance and watching out for each other.
Admiral Snyder, we appreciate your staying with us and giving us the insight as best that you can, especially from your years and years and years of service to our country in the military. We want to go through a little bit of information right now. We have confirmed that the White House is aware of this shooting. The White House press secretary posting, quote, "The president has been briefed on the shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia. The White House is monitoring that situation."
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp released the following statement: "As we remain in close contact with law enforcement on the ground, Marty, the girls, and I are saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart. We are keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. And we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same."
And just after noon, U.S. House Representative Buddy Carter posted the following message on social media. He says, quote, "I am monitoring the situation in Fort Stewart. Please join me in prayers for the casualties, their families, and the brave law enforcement officers working to protect our community." Representative Carter serves Georgia's 1st Congressional District, which spans from Savannah, so that's his area, all the way to Camden County on our First Coast area.
And a brand new statement from Georgia Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock right now. It says, "I'm heartbroken to see the news of an active shooter incident at Fort Stewart today. I'm monitoring the situation closely and join all of Georgians as we pray for the safety."
Okay, let's take a live look right now of an ambulance there. We've been talking about some of the soldiers being transported. We don't know if 5 have been transported. We hope that they are still alive.
Sure.
People are, I know, praying for them and sending their thoughts to them. We know that the shooter is in custody, meaning that at this point he might be alive. We don't know if he's been injured or shot, him or her themselves. And then also right now we are all hearing that most of the base at Fort Stewart is off of lockdown, but the ABCT area, which is the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area, is still on lockdown. That's a subset of the Fort Stewart area base. And we do have Admiral Snyder still on the phone right now, and I know it's hard to look at your sources and talk to us at the same time, but have you gotten any new information in the last couple of minutes?
No, I haven't. It looks like much of what we've been talking about is being confirmed in more areas, which are, of course, at this point is good news.
Sir, do you know much about Fort Stewart and just who is there? I know 3rd Infantry, but what takes place there?
Yeah, so that's where 3rd Infantry Division is the main headquarters that's there. They have subordinate units, if you will, units that work for them, and that's what a brigade combat team is. And so that is their main base for administration and local training. And their job is to be ready for missions that are called upon. And of course, during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that was to deploy overseas and in many cases frequently to conduct the missions that were required over there. So typically those units will spend some time in the base in sort of a reset after a deployment, spending time with their families, catching up on the other things, the administrative kind of things, and then they'll begin to train for that next deployment. Of course, in those cases, it was typically Iraq and then Afghanistan. But we still are sending Army forces around the world, particularly Europe, these days. And so those forces would start their training. Much of that would be local initially. And then they typically deploy to a larger training base, perhaps out in California, for the training of the broader group. And so it's really this cycle of reset, recover, train, deploy. And so Fort Stewart serves as that headquarters for all of those things that are happening. And in this case, of course, where many of their families live and their children go to school.
My understanding is that Fort Stewart, outside of the military post, is certainly a military town because it's not that big. Savannah is just an hour away, and so a lot of the commerce that takes place there in that small region is because of Fort Stewart, the military base. So a lot of people in that area are going to certainly be curious about what took place here today.
And so, Admiral Snyder, let me ask you, I know you have spent much of your military career working on security for our country at NORAD, at the Pentagon, and so forth. I'm seeing a lot right now on social media, people saying, oh, my son is at Fort Stewart, or I'm worried about somebody. But then, Admiral Snyder, there are warnings. Don't put anything on social media. You never know who is reading these pages and reading these comments. Is that a legitimate concern? Should people right now not make any family connection to anybody on Fort Stewart or not?
That's a good idea. Clearly there are bad actors out there that troll social media constantly, looking for things they could exploit. And of course, finding out that you have a family member in the military could do that. So it's always a good idea to be cognizant of personal information that you put out on social media. And for those families waiting, I'm confident that the officials at Fort Stewart are working as hard and as quickly as they can to notify the family of the casualties in this case, which at some point they'll be able to announce, who those casualties were and that their families have been notified. And that's when everyone really can take a deep sigh of relief, of course, except for those folks with family members that were one of the casualties.
And Admiral Snyder, I know you work with a lot of social media posts and sources. What are the reliable ones that you look at that people can trust right now if they're trying to look up information, and which ones should we possibly avoid?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, sort of the tried and true resources, our network news, and the big thing for me is to frequently check what you're reading. And when you can, find confirmation from another news source or from in this case, the Department of Defense themselves. We see these official posts coming out from Department of Defense officials, which is really the most reliable source. But we get a little frustrated sometimes because it takes time. So the important thing is go with known news sources and then check what you're reading to make sure that you can confirm that through other means.
And what I'm seeing here on social media, obviously this story has resonated all over the country. I see a post from a Nebraska Army National Guard mom. She has 2 who served. She's sending prayers to everybody. But the question people keep asking is, was the shooter a soldier or a civilian? And Admiral Snyder, we don't know that right now.
No, we don't. And we'll just have to wait for this investigation to play out. My sense is that, relatively soon, I think we'll hear more from the Department of Defense officials as they learn more and are comfortable putting that information out.
So will the investigation be handled strictly by the military? We've seen the FBI already giving a statement that they're aware of what's going on, but how does the investigation work on something like this?
Yeah, well, typically that will fall to the local officials initially. And the Army does have an investigative service. They do have, as we've mentioned, military police adjutant generals that are charged of security on these bases. But in many cases, given an event like this, they will go out and ask for additional resources to help. And whether it's the FBI, local police, typically all of these law enforcement agencies work together very well and support each other as necessary.
Admiral Snyder, we're looking at a map now of Fort Stewart. They are just outside of Hinesville, Georgia. And according to our producers, they've been able to locate the area of the shooting at the 2nd BCT, and just an area that doesn't look like it is too close into the center of Fort Stewart. And so I'm going to try and see if we can pull up this map so we can have a better look at it here. And so here is the map of Fort Stewart, if you will. And so down here it says to Hinesville. So going down that way, that's Hinesville. That's the kind of small military town that I was talking about earlier. Fort Stewart right here, you can see that most of the activity is right in this area, right? Well, the area of the shooting, 2nd BCT, that's what I'm seeing on mine too, is right up here. And so it seems to be a little bit further out from the main central activity of Fort Stewart. And up in here, if you look a little bit closer, and I'm able to pull it up on my map even more, there's like a shopette and a subway right here. There's also a gate. It says gate 4 24/7. Now, it doesn't seem like there are many other roads that go here, but there's a gate then to get into this other area according to this map. And then there's a dental clinic. There is a gym right here, and then various other places that use a bunch of letters to describe things that I'm sure military personnel would understand, but a layperson, I don't know what all this means. But a Johnson gym, a dental clinic, and then right here is that 2nd BCT, and that is the area where the shooting took place. So again, you can see that it's up here where the shooting took place, and all of Fort Stewart is around in here. So shooting in the northeast part of the Fort Stewart property. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking about when we're looking at Fort Stewart. And even here it says town center insert. So most of the activity that takes place, not necessarily for training purposes, but for I guess the general activity of the post right in here, that's shown in clarity over on that side, but again, the shooting happening right up in here. 5 soldiers have been shot. We don't know how they're doing. We don't know if they have passed away. We also don't know if it's just injuries that we're talking about. I shouldn't say just injuries. They could be bad injuries, but we know that they were taken to a hospital here at Fort Stewart. Will they be going somewhere else to a larger facility, maybe a trauma center outside of the post? We're not really sure. You would think that if it was really bad injuries, they would have gone directly to a trauma center. But again, hate to speculate here, but we're just trying to put the pieces together based on what we know about the medical facilities here and also in Savannah.
And Jess, if you can hear me right now, I was trying to look at the map from across the studio here. Do you see where the schools are marked? Because we know some of those schools were put on lockdown too. I see an icon up there that's purple. And then Admiral Snyder said that the schools would have been on base. And so perhaps at the heart down to the lower left of where the shooting was, but not near. It doesn't look there's any school, I don't believe, near that shooting.
I don't see that. DFAC and Spartan is what this particular location is, here next to the gym and then also next to the dental clinic. And I just don't know the military lingo to know exactly what that is. I would have to look at the map a little bit more closely and take a little bit more time to look at it to locate those schools.
All right, we want to let you know that upcoming, we don't have him on the phone just yet, but we understand that we're going to be able to talk with somebody from the Liberty County Emergency Management. He should have some information for us there because that is where Fort Stewart is in Liberty County. So we're hoping to go to him in just a moment as soon as that technically gets connected right there. Oh, he's on the phone right now. Robert Bob Dodd. Mr. Bob, Mr. Dodd, can I call you Robert? Is that all right? All right.
Yes, ma'am, that's fine.
I'm so sorry. This is Jacksonville right now. I am so sorry for what you all are dealing with up there. Can you fill us in with what information you have that we might not know at this point?
So we received a call from Fort Stewart's EMA emergency manager that they had an active shooter going on. We had the police, fire, and EMS respond out there to assist in it. As of right now, all of them have been cleared back in quarters. And as they continue on the investigation, that's all the information that we have right now.
And Robert, is there any way you can tell us if the casualties involve people who are injured, or do we know of any deaths? I hope not.
At this time, I do not.
And then where were your personnel as far as going? Were they allowed on, these are civilians, or were you working with military police only?
Right, we were working with the military, so our people responded out on the base.
So can you give us a size estimate of how many civilians, police, fire, EMS went to the base to try to help on the outside there?
From us, we had 2 ambulance, 2 fire personnel, 1 fire apparatuses, and then numerous police.
And so from what you've been able to tell, is the base in the clear now? Is the lockdown over? We understood that part of the base where this brigade training is, the ABCT area, was still on lockdown. Is that your understanding, or has that been lifted now?
Yeah, that's the way we're understanding. 2nd Brigade is still locked down, but the Potomac area out on the main base is open.
Okay, and have you been told why the 2nd Brigade area is still on lockdown?
No, I haven't.
Okay, and then as far as the active shooter training that you all have, how would you be assisting the military? I know the military is well staffed. Is there a reason that they needed you all in addition to what they already have at that large base?
Right, and you know, I guess the more people you have, the better off you are. And then we work really close with Fort Stewart, along with our police, fire, and EMS. We do exercises together, so this is just part of that mutual aid agreement that we have.
And do you have any connections yourself, Mr. Dodd, with military personnel, any family or friends there on the base?
No, I do not.
Okay, well, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody in that community. Describe to us for just a moment how important the Fort Stewart area is to the community there. We live in a military community. We know how much our community honors people who serve our country. We have multiple military bases here and, of course, up in Georgia as well. So tell us about the feeling that's going on right now in your community.
Well, Liberty County is dependent. You know, Fort Stewart plays a big part of our community. I think they said 73% of the military population live within the community outside of the base. So we depend on Fort Stewart a lot.
And so there, I'm sure there's a feeling of shock and sadness. And are you seeing anybody gather outside the base for prayers or thoughts, or what's going on there in the community, or are people staying at home and still nervous?
Still, we haven't seen anything as of yet. I haven't heard of anything that's going to take place, but you know, this is a revolving thing as things can change.
And how long have you worked in your post there? Has there ever been an active shooter before at Fort Stewart in years past?
No, I've been here for about 7 years. I don't recall a active shooter on Fort Stewart.
Has anybody told you whether the shooter who is in custody now is a civilian or a military member?
I have not heard that information.
Okay, so just to clarify what you said before, 73% of military population involved with Fort Stewart actually lives outside the base in the community. Is that correct? Did I understand that right?
Right. Liberty County, Bryan County, Chatham County, Tattnall County. Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Is there anything else you wanted to pass along to the military members in our community and the people who are just generally worried about this situation, Mr. Dodd?
No, just keep Fort Stewart in your prayers, and we'll get through this, and we'll be a better Fort Stewart.
Well, we appreciate your positive outlook there, and we're so sorry for what you're going through. You start out the day just a normal Wednesday, and then something like this happens, and everybody's heart sinks. So, Mr. Dodd, we appreciate your being on the phone with us. He's from the Liberty County Emergency Management System. He's the manager there, and so we appreciate all the information he's been able to give us the best that he can. Let's now go back to Jess over there. Thank you again, Mr. Dodd. She is with our safety and crime expert, Ken Jefferson, right now.
Yes, and so Ken, thank you for coming in very quickly. And so I'm curious, because we have seen the military police out there, and we know the military police responded Jeannie was just talking with Liberty County and talking about, I guess it was like 2 fire trucks and 2 ambulances and various police went out there to respond. They have now all been cleared. Tell me a little bit about the joint effort to respond together when you have civilian law enforcement working also with military law enforcement. How does that all work when you've got a situation like this?
So you got an isolated situation on a military base, so it's pretty much isolated away from the public, away from the community, the outside community. So you want to, and when you realize that you have an active shooter and you've got 5 people that's already been shot, you want to deploy as many resources as you can. Of course, you're going to use the military police because they're right there.
Sure.
But you want to deploy the outside police as well, which is exactly what they did. You deploy every available resource because, number one, you got a lot of things that you got to do. You've got to find the shooter, get an identity of the shooter so that you make sure you hit the right person, number one. Number two, you got to make sure that there are no accomplices, that he may be in collusion with someone else that's shooting. And then you got to care for the injured. You got to get them all out. So you got a lot of things that's going on. So as many resources that you can utilize is what you want to do.
In that kind of situation, we have seen in other situations where the radios weren't all on the same signal or something like that, and the communication has not been as effective because not everybody is on the same line, if you will. Do you know anything about this particular situation or how challenging that can be?
That can easily happen, and it can be challenging at times. However, they train and practice for things like this. So the outside police have their dispatcher talking to the dispatcher that's inside there as well, and they're relaying that information. So they may not be able to talk to one another directly unless they have a designated channel that can go, the military can go to the civilian channel or vice versa. But the dispatchers are talking to each other and they're getting all the information at the same time.
Okay, so with this particular situation, we know the 911 call came in at 10:56. The suspect was apprehended at 11:35. So that's a matter of what, 39 minutes between 911 call and apprehending the suspect. Your thoughts on that?
That's a good time to stop that threat, simply because you got a large military base, and then you've got to rely on witnesses to give a description, you know, height, weight, hair color, race, direction of travel. All those things are very important to law enforcement once they get there. And again, it goes back to deploying as many resources as you can to do a manhunt, so that you can apprehend him at a good time, or a quick time. In this case, that's exactly what they did. 39 minutes is really good for a large space like that. But the good thing is it's isolated. You don't have various areas that he can go into if he were outside of the base. All
right. At this point, we don't know if he was able to access the shooter, if he was able to access entry somehow, or if he was already on the post, or just what. We don't know anything about him really.
Yeah, that's part of the investigation. They're going to have to trace it back. First of all, they have to identify him. Is he a soldier? Is he a former soldier? Is he a civilian? You know, those 3 questions happen. Once they answer that question, then they'll know how to backtrack. How did he get in? If he's not a soldier, if he's a civilian, how did he get in on our base? Was he allowed special privileges? Did he have credentials to be able to get in? All that's a part of the investigation that'll lead directly up to the incident.
And while you're speaking, we just saw another ambulance pull into the hospital and a police or law enforcement officer pull in as well. And so we don't know if that had anything to do with the shooting at Fort Stewart that we're talking about now, but we just kind of wanted to explain what we're seeing on our live shot here as we look at what one of the stations in Savannah is sending us now. So 5 soldiers shot. That's what we were told. 5 soldiers shot. Does that indicate to you anything that they were targeted or looking for a military to be?
It is a base and it's got soldiers on it. So maybe he shot the first available. I don't know. Maybe he had a target. We don't know. The investigation will probably let us know more information as a result of that. But yeah, 5 soldiers are shot. It appears that he was trying to wreak as much havoc as he possibly can. Usually when there's an active shooter, they want to make a name for themselves, if you will. That sounds creepy, but that's exactly what it is. They want to make a name for themselves, and they want to shoot and kill as many people as they possibly can.
And how sad that is. And then when we received a statement also from Fort Stewart, gosh, I guess about 12:30ish or so, it said, suspect apprehended, no further danger to the public. To you, that indicates, I mean, to me, it indicates that he's the one.
Well, they've concluded that he acted alone. He's a lone wolf. If they made a statement like that.
Okay.
And he's been apprehended. They've got him in custody.
Okay.
And they wanted to reassure everyone that it's safe. It's safe now. It's back to normal.
Sure.
Now because they're on the job. They've apprehended the suspect. Unfortunately, 5 soldiers were shot, and we pray for their recovery. But you have to make a statement like that to assure the public so that they can lessen their anxiety and let them know that we're in charge. We've got the situation under control, and things are back to normal, so to speak.
So Ken, we're watching this in Georgia, and I know a lot of folks here in Jacksonville are probably wondering, well, could that happen here? And certainly could happen anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. What are the partnerships that take place? Because you've been here a while. So what are the partnerships that exist with local law enforcement and with military law enforcement at our various military posts and bases?
And that's a great question. They have multi-agency agreements.
Okay.
If something like this happens or when things like this happen, they know exactly how to coordinate. They know exactly how to communicate. They know exactly how to respond. The military knows how the police are going to respond. Those sort of things are practiced from time to time. God forbid, in the event that something like that happened, we have 3 bases here, so you know, and not only that, it can happen anywhere.
Sure.
God forbid it to happen again, but it can happen anywhere, and you've got to be prepared for it. You can't, and they're not sitting back. And we're talking about one of the strongest militaries in the world.
Right.
So you best believe that they'll be prepared in the event that something like that happens. But you know, you never can predict when it's going to happen.
I know.
That's the problem. You don't know when it's going to happen, so you have to stay on alert. The old saying is from a wise old man, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, thank you. If you don't mind sticking around with us for just a little bit longer. Right now, we also have a Verify that is part and partial to the situation at hand. So there is a lot of information and some contradicting and some unconfirmed floating information around this. And so I don't have my clicker upstairs, so if you don't mind helping me with the teleprompter right now, I want to make sure that I'm saying the right thing. But especially when it comes to social media, there is a lot of information out there. And so we are on your side, and we can verify for you a couple things. We can verify these 3 things are true. 5 soldiers have been shot. The shooting happened on the base, and the shooter was arrested. That's all according to base officials. And we've seen pictures posted on social media claiming to be a picture of the shooter. As of now, those pictures are false, which brings us to what we still do not know, and that is the identity of the shooter, as well as a motive for the shooting. We also do not know the current conditions of the victims, but we are on your side working to get all of this information confirmed. You know, a lot of information came at us fast and furious in the hour that it came out, and now we're waiting, and the information trickle is somewhat slow, right?
Yeah, that's usual and customary when something like this happens. Information start going left, right, north, and south, and then when it doesn't come in fast enough, people start to speculate and predict or sometimes just lie about certain things, you know. So you have to wait for the official word. We got an official statement from the base. That's all we go on. We don't go on anything else.
Okay. Ken, thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
If you don't mind just holding on with us for a few more minutes. Ginny, we're going to send things back over to you.
That's right. Thank you very much for all that insight. We do appreciate that. We have on the phone right now a state senator from Georgia. He's a Republican from District 1. His name is Senator Ben Watson, and he is also a medical doctor. So that's going to be very helpful in this situation. And Senator Watson, thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear me right now? Okay. Senator Watson?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. This story is so difficult to hear. We're seeing all sorts of messages from people, and they're simple, but they are powerful. One grandmother says, "My granddaughter is there. Please pray for her." So many families worried. We know that part of the base still is on lockdown, that 2nd Armored Brigade combat area, which is kind of off to the side. And we know that you are not treating the patients from the base. But as a medical doctor, what sort of wounds or injuries would concern you the most from an active shooter situation like this?
Well, presumably it's gunshot wounds, and we've got to consider that. If there were 5 wounded, then if we have 2 that have been transported to the level, so you worry and pray if their injuries were that.
So, and
I'm getting
yes, State Senator, yes, we can hear you. It's cutting in and out just a little bit. So let me ask the producers: are we being able to hear this on the air, or is his audio? It is. Okay, Senator, we can hear you. So if you'll just keep speaking, it is just fine on our air.
Okay.
And so we were talking about the kinds of injuries from an active shooter situation, most likely gunshots?
Well, presumably that's the case. Is that they said there were 5 injuries, and that it was related to gunshot stand. And I do understand from the report that there are 2 soldiers that have been transported to our level 1 trauma center here in Savannah. And as your previous speaker was discussing about the interagency agreement related to that, but it does affect the whole community. The schools were in lockdown. I understand that the schools are not in lockdown. And it is reassuring that it is in custody. And certainly the sadness and the other issue is that it does create a lot of anxiety. So it's good to know that the shooter is in custody and that most of the lockdown is been removed. And it's also very reassuring that they did take them to triage them to community hospital there on base called Wynn Army Community Hospital. And they've done the appropriate thing by transferring the ones at the level 1 trauma center.
So as you understand, and I can't quite hear everything that you're saying, Senator, but are you saying that they've gone to 2 different hospitals, one on a base and one is out in the community, or is that not right?
What I understand, this is accurate. Again, everything is very preliminary in that they did initially go to Wynn Army Community Hospital. And from there, 2 are known to have been transferred. The hospital here in Memorial, which is a level 1 trauma center.
So the 2 who were transported from Wynn Army Hospital would have gone to a higher level trauma center, so injuries more severe?
Well, that would be the presumption. Or were they overwhelmed there at our community hospital to handle 5 victims there? And it could be a matter of helping out, or it could be a matter that they need the high level of service.
How far apart are those hospitals?
About 45 minutes, probably about a 30-minute ambulance ride. I understand that they chose not to go by helicopter because of the weather.
Okay, so the Wynn Army Community Hospital is on base, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, we've been watching live pictures outside of the hospital, and we see ambulances just in the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 minutes with police escorts. We do not know if those were part of the injured personnel from the base or not, but that's quite a bit of time since the shooting happened. What would that tell you?
Well, I mean, first of all, they received care, at the site, and then they were taken to the local community hospital care on base. So you would want to stabilize them, communicate, assess them, and do whatever was needed from a trauma care that they would need at the time. And then if they needed a higher level of care, you would transport them then. I mean, it sounds like they're doing everything very appropriate. You don't want to rush things. You want to put in a
Senator, I'm not sure if you, I don't want to interrupt you, sir, but we've just gotten some encouraging news here that, and I apologize if I'm interrupting you, but we've just been told that there are no wounded soldiers who've died. So there are no fatalities. And so all 5 of these wounded soldiers apparently are being treated. None has died, as we understand it. That's confirmed information according to a U.S. official. Also, the shooter involved in this was a male soldier there on base. So the question has been, was it a civilian or a soldier? And we now know from confirmed sources that it was a male soldier. And there is all clear for Fort Stewart, Wright Army Airfield, and Evans Army Airfield. They are all clear right now. So that would tell you some good news, wouldn't it, Senator?
Absolutely, it would be great. No one died. I think that's a relief for everyone. It is also reassuring that the soldiers at the Level 1 Trauma Center are in a place where they need to be and can be taken care of. Georgia has a great reputation when it comes to trauma. As a matter of fact, we lead the nation when it comes to reduced mortality and morbidity relating to trauma care. We have done a great job. The trauma surgeons, done a great job in leading that through research and residency program and training throughout the state.
And you're talking about throughout the state, not just at the Level 2 Memorial Hospital, the trauma area there.
So Memorial is a Level 1 trauma care. It's the highest level we have in the state. It is what we have here in southeast Georgia, and that is for the whole state of Georgia, better than Florida, better than South Carolina, better than any of our neighbors, better than the northeastern United States. Georgia is at the top when it comes to trauma care.
At this point, that's really good news. And I don't want to throw any sort of negative thought onto this, but just because someone's alive now, they could still be in critical condition, and we don't know that yet. They could still be in danger of losing a life. Right now, they're alive?
Absolutely. I mean, if they are at the Level 1 Trauma Center because that's needed, that would certainly show that they have increased risk relating to that. And you're absolutely right about predicting anything that may happen in the future.
So you represent this whole area in Georgia, in District 1. I'm not sure what that encompasses. Does it encompass the Savannah area, or are you just near there?
So I have about half of the city of Savannah, and I have all of Bryan County, all of Liberty County, which is what Fort Stewart is in both those counties. And I have about half of Chatham County, which is where Savannah is.
Okay, I don't know if this is a fair question, but it's on my mind, so let me ask you. Since you are a legislator from that general area there, that 2nd Armored Brigade combat area where the active shooter apparently was kind of off on the side of the base. If you look at a map, it's kind of up on the northeast area. Has there been any public concern about that area not being as protected as the rest of Fort Stewart, or is that not a fair question? Senator Watson, can you hear me?
Again, that's a federal facility versus state. I can't comment.
Okay, I understand. Very well. Good. I appreciate that. So let me leave you with one more opportunity to talk to any families or people in your community who are very supportive of the military and just heartbroken to see this even happening today. As a state senator, what is the message you'd like to give out?
Well, I mean, we're all sad and heartbroken. And we're thinking of you, we're praying for you, and we're very sad that this happened, but we're certainly very happy that it sounded like they responded appropriately and expeditiously. And, it affects the whole community, not just those who are in the military, but everyone in our community has interactions with the community. So it certainly does create a lot of anxiety, but it is reassuring that this is very fast and they're handling the situation well.
And Senator Watson, as you well know, Jacksonville is a very, very strong military community. We have our military bases here and thousands of people who have served in the military who are either on active duty or they're veterans of past conflicts, and their hearts go out and their prayers go out in a situation like this. Lots of camaraderie, lots of prayers and thoughts. Senator, we appreciate that. Senator Ben Watson, a Georgia State Senator and also a medical doctor. Thanks for joining us on the phone right now. We want to give you an important update on the schools that were put on a soft lockdown during this active shooter situation. Liberty County schools now saying the lockdown has been lifted. 3 schools were impacted. The school district saying right now there is no threat, that the schools on base now are free from the lockdown, so that's some good news there. And so let's go back over now to Ken Jefferson, our crime and safety analyst, and Jess. So Jess, go ahead.
And in the last few minutes now, we have learned that 2 of the 5 soldiers that were shot have been taken via ambulance, not helicopter, to Trauma 1 Center, medical center elsewhere off base. Your thoughts on that?
other 5 too has been taken to the trauma unit, which means that they need immediate urgent care in the trauma unit. That means that they're probably in critical condition.
Okay.
They're a little worse off than the other 3, so they need that immediate team care.
Okay, all right. The fact that they went by not helicopter, but by ambulance, the senator said it was because of weather, and so they couldn't put the helicopter in the sky at that point. And that other hospital is about 30. Well, he said it would be a 30-minute ambulance ride. It's probably a 45-minute drive. But also, we've learned that the shooter is a male soldier, and that's according to an official now reporting that to us. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So now we know who the shooter is.
Yeah.
Now we need to know the motive.
Yes.
And obviously he was taken alive, obviously without incident, if he's been apprehended and they've not reported anything other than that.
Okay.
So they'll get a chance to interrogate him to see exactly what's going on. You can imagine right now they're checking everything. They're checking where he lives. They're checking his family members. They're hunting them down. They're checking the neighbors, friends. They're talking to everybody. They want to make sure that if they go to his residence, because the shooter knows that they're going to eventually go to his residence, they want to make sure that they have the bomb unit with them so that they won't walk in on any kind of booby traps or anything to take out officials as they're investigating him. So all these things are in the play right now. It's a lot of moving parts that's going on right now.
And if I may add just some emotion, I think for anyone hearing that, it's just got to be sad that a soldier would end up turning a gun on fellow soldiers.
Yeah, it's a sad commentary, Jessica, to even imagine something like that, because the military is built on camaraderie, teamwork, team building, all of these things for the protection of our country, and to think that someone inside would turn on his fellow brothers and sisters who wear the uniform, who defend our country, to do something like that. I don't want to say it like this, but I can only think of saying it like this. You can kind of, I don't understand any of it, but you can kind of understand if an outside person came in and did something like that, but it's very difficult to digest that a soldier will do that to other soldiers.
It is very difficult to digest. Yeah, you're right. So thank you for being with us. We're going to continue our coverage, and we're going to, at this point, send things back over to Jeannie. Jeannie?
All right, we want to make sure we give you that recap, because right now it's hopeful. We know that no one was killed. 5 Army soldiers being treated right now. 2, as you all have been talking about, and we've been talking with the doctor from Georgia, were in critical or are in critical condition. They're at a level 1 hospital, level 1 trauma center. We know that a male soldier is in custody, and we also know that Fort Stewart, Wright Army Airfield, also Evans Airfield, all clear now. The lockdown lifted for that. Lockdown lifted for the schools on base as well. So let's get back on the phone now with our military expert, Vice Admiral Rick Snyder. And Rick, that's some good news, at least now. We hope those soldiers, especially the ones in critical condition, are going to pull through. But what does it say to you now that we know the shooter is in custody and it's a male soldier?
Yeah, I would echo the same comments made earlier. It's certainly unfortunate that someone as part of your unit would do this kind of thing to your fellow soldiers in this case, and certainly a tragedy. It's something we also train to in the military, and it's this idea of insider threat. It's happened before. We've had, of course, the soldier at Fort Hood many years ago. One of the foreign exchange students in Pensacola several years ago. We had it at the shipyard in Hawaii. We've also had it at the Navy Yard in D.C., so it's not uncommon. And as a result of those past events, we also trained to this insider threat, how to recognize it and how to respond.
And so let me ask you that. I was wondering the same thing as you were talking about. What is the current training? What are the current red flags that people are supposed to watch out for, in addition to just generalized malaise among people? Somebody who might have PTSD or whatever it is, what is the current training?
Yeah, I mean, certainly their apparent or their psychological appearance. Do they seem depressed? Do they seem anxious? Are they doing things that are unusual? Is something you watch for. And you also look for other signs. Are they doing other things that are inappropriate and something that need to come to your attention? And then threats. You have to take threats seriously. but most importantly, you have to be able to be willing to come forward with these signs if you see them or notice them, and bring it to the attention of the right folks so that action be taken before it goes too far, like it appears to have done in this case.
And for all of us laymen, help us understand. We just said that Fort Stewart now all clear, Wright Army Airfield clear, and then Evans Airfield clear too. Help us understand how those all fit together. What are those pieces?
Yeah, typically, because there are aviation units at Fort Stewart, they use their own local fields to do a lot of their training rather than congest a civilian field like, say, Savannah. And so they typically have these smaller fields nearby that are generally for just military use. In some cases, they're dual use with civilians, but it gives them a chance to have more freedom at those bases to do the type of training they need to do.
And I just a minute ago asked the state senator from that area, Ben Watson, about this place where the active shooter shot the soldiers. And we've been talking about how it's been called for short ACBT, which is like a brigade training area, on the far corner of the map when you look at all of Fort Stewart. And I asked him if there's ever been any concern in that community about the safety of that part of the base. And he said, well, that's a federal issue. I can't talk about that. Would that seem to you to be any concern that it's kind of off on the edge of the base? Is the security just the same there? You see it's in the upper right-hand corner of your map right there on the TV screen.
Yeah, and just to clarify a little bit, I mean, the maps we've been showing are very accurate with sort of the main area of Fort Stewart, which is really just a very small piece of the larger base. They're essentially contiguous with the other areas we talked about, the hospital and the main gate and that kind of thing. And so this is off to the side, which wouldn't be uncommon. But I wouldn't be surprised if, in fact, there was an even greater secure procedures in place to get to that area, because that's where the equipment is stored. That's where you probably have your classified information, and it's not uncommon to have an even further restricted area in those really important places. And so, to answer your question, no, I don't think that was any greater concern. In fact, it may have been even less risky, given some potential additional security, given the operations that go on there.
All right, very much. I appreciate your help. And if you just stay on the line with me, I know you can hear the TV as well. We're going to play something that I think you're going to want to hear, Admiral Snyder. We are hearing the moment that dispatchers in the Fort Stewart area were told about the shooting today. You're about to listen to a series of 3 first responder dispatch calls, all within a 90-second period. So let's all listen to that for the first time together.
Mag Station 1, mutual aid request for a gunshot wound on Fort Stewart. It'll be building 8420 2nd Brigade, 8420 2nd Brigade, gunshot wound, mutual aid. There's possibly 5 patients. They have both of their EMS trucks on scene. The scene is clear. Everything is secure. We don't know who has what. Multiple people injured. Stand by. I'm landline with Fort Stewart on the 911 call. They have an active shooter on Fort Stewart.
So, Admiral Snyder, we're joined now by Heather Crawford, who's been following this as well. Thanks for being with us as well. And the other thing, too, that we wanted to point out is that there was quite a distance to go from the military base with at least 2 of these people who were critically injured to Memorial Hospital, which is a level 1 trauma hospital. 45 minutes by car, but by ambulance, 30 minutes. So that must have been very important to get those to that level 1 hospital, that trauma center. And from what you've just heard on the phone, could you hear that from the dispatchers, Lieutenant or Admiral Snyder?
Well, it seems to me like there's a little bit of uncertainty. It was clear during that call that the local Army Emergency Medical Services were already on the scene, which of course is good news. And it's not uncommon to respond more than perhaps you think you need to, because you don't know what's going to develop. So my sense is that either the casualties they had already come upon were greater than they could handle, or there was just a concern that there may be more casualties. So let's use our mutual aid agreement with the local community to bring more help in there.
All right. Stay with us if you would, Admiral Snyder. We are all craving some more information at this point. We've gotten the key piece of information that the shooter is in custody. We know is a male soldier. 5 soldiers shot. They are at this point still alive. perhaps 2 in critical condition, but we're going to be getting some more information very soon, Heather.
That's right, Jeannie. And you know, anytime you have an active shooter situation like this, the facts come in, they're fluid, it's an evolving situation. What we know is that we're going to have an official news briefing at 3:30. So in a little less than an hour and a half, we are going to get an official update on what transpired there this morning. At this point, what we know is that at least 5 soldiers have been shot on base there at Fort Stewart. Officials saying that the shooter is a male soldier, and so right now he is in custody, I'm sure being questioned, trying to get some information. The question we all have is why? Why did something like this happen today on what is supposed to be a very secure facility? And we know all different kinds of agencies are there right now investigating while these 5 soldiers are being treated for the injuries. Right now we have not heard of anyone dying. So we know 5 soldiers being treated right now, 2 of them at a trauma center.
And we just heard from you, Admiral Snyder, talking about this has happened before. We've had people on base shooting people on base. You mentioned Fort Hood, Pensacola, the Naval Yard in D.C. and Hawaii. Is there anything at all on higher levels of government that's being discussed to be able to prevent anything like that? Is that even possible?
Yeah, you know, as we talked about earlier, a lot of the insider threat training that's happening now is as a result of those events. And as always in these cases, after the event, there will be a very in-depth review of what happened to identify perhaps any gaps in security or additional security that could have been used in these cases to try and prevent what happened.
And what could a possible gap even be? I'm thinking about a military base, tight security, defending our country. What could that even turn out to be?
It could be, you know, all the way before this incident of a failure to identify a person who could potentially do this activity. It could be a lax in security to gate, very uncommon. You know, that's where this insider threat that we talked about, a person that's already part of that organization, is a real danger because they have the valid ID, they have the valid reason to be there, and perhaps a valid reason to access weapons for training. And so that acute awareness of the people that are around you and how they may be acting, and then the willingness to come forward is very important.
And Admiral Snyder, NBC News is reporting that this is not the first serious shooting at Fort Stewart. An Army sergeant was killed there on the base back in 2022. It was a 30-year-old Sergeant Nathan Hillman from Pennsylvania, who was an Afghan veteran. He died during that shooting in December 2022. That case still making its way through the court system. But having had something like this happen there before, and then now having this today, kind of walk us through the types of training that bases like this go through to prepare for the unthinkable happening.
You know, we talked about the personal insider threat piece. There's also very frequent security drills where they will enhance the level of security or test the current level of security to make sure that procedures that are in place, like identification checking, vehicle checking, are actually being carried out. As far as, you know, weapons access, another very controlled process that is frequently checked to make sure that there's procedures for checking out weapons to people are being done correctly, that the folks that are receiving those weapons have the correct training and are vetted sufficiently to make sure that they're safe to have those weapons. For instance, if a soldier were to commit a crime in town, it'd be very likely that they would remove that person's weapons access and thus reducing that potential threat.
So, Admiral Snyder, tell us about where soldiers from Fort Stewart go. I imagine they're going all over the world. Is there any hot spot right now that might be kicking up some sort of urge to hurt fellow soldiers on the base?
No, I don't think so. Many of the recent Army deployments have been, well, first of all, they'll deploy in the United States for their higher level training to some of the Army ranges out in the western part of the United States. But most of those deployments have been to Europe in support of our NATO allies in response to being ready to what is happening in the excuse me, Russia and the Ukraine. So I don't think their recent activities would have raised the threat level for them.
And so we talked about threat level. We want to repeat that again. You don't know of any particular terrorist threat against any base in Georgia, specifically not Fort Stewart. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm not aware of any heightened threat to bases in Georgia or specifically Fort Stewart.
And let's talk a little about why it's been so important to speak about the fact that these 5 soldiers have been transported to 2 different hospitals, one on base and one down in the community. Where would that have been? They said that it might have been because we're worried about having an overstaffing or understaffing, and there aren't enough medical personnel to keep track of that. Do you know anything about the hospital on base in Fort Stewart? Does it have a smaller staff than normal, perhaps after any kind of cuts, or why would they need 2 hospitals?
Yeah, my sense is one of 2 reasons. It is a community hospital, so it's there to basically care for the local community, your sort of normal day-to-day injuries and illnesses and wellness care. As was mentioned, it's not a level 1 trauma center, so they typically would not be ready to handle a mass casualty, several injuries, or even gunshot wounds or serious injuries like that. So, in my mind, once they were able to initially assess the victims, they were able to conduct some triage, and either immediately determined that, in this case, it looks like 2 of those soldiers needed a higher level of care, so let's get them to the level 1 trauma center, or perhaps they all initially went to the community hospital there and then determined that some needed a higher level of care. It would be possible that just based on the size and the mission of that hospital, they just weren't ready or capable of handling 5 gunshot wounds at the same time.
Admiral Snyder, please stand by with us. Let's go over now to Ken Jefferson, our crime and safety expert, along with Heather.
All right, Jeannie, thank you so much. And so just again, we are waiting for the base commander at Fort Stewart to give us an update. That's going to happen at 3:30. We will carry that live. But in the meantime, our crime and safety expert, Ken Jefferson, is back with us now. And Ken, anytime there's an active shooter situation like this, there's a lot of information that quickly gets to social media. Some of it's true, some of it's not, some of it we just don't know. So we're here to separate fact from fiction. We want to verify what we know at this hour. So I want to show you this graphic right here. Here is what we know, what we can verify for you in regards to that mass shooting at Fort Stewart this morning. What is true? We know that 5 soldiers have been shot. This happened there on the base in Georgia, Fort Stewart, and that the shooter has been arrested. An official telling ABC News that that shooter is a soldier. What is false? Social media post on the shooter's identity. That has not been released as far as who the shooter is. And what we don't know is who he is, what the motive for the shooting was, or the victim's condition. However, we have learned that 2 of the soldiers who were shot have been transferred to a trauma center. So I want to ask you about the response. This happened on a military base. Speak to the response efforts after it first came in that shots had been fired on base.
So it happened on a military base, which is an isolated area.
Right.
It's enclosed, it's secure for the most part. That made it relatively great for law enforcement officials, military police, to respond immediately because they're there. They don't have to come from a long way. They're already there. And then they coordinate with the outside agencies under their multi-agency agreement, because you want to utilize all the resources that you can after this happens. You want to contain the shooter. You want to contain the area that he is in so that he can't get away, get off the base. And you want to make sure everybody around is safe. So they locked down the schools. They did all their due diligence, if you will. The response time was great, number 1. And then number 2, the apprehension of this particular guy was great as well, because within 39 minutes or so after the last person had been shot, he was already in custody. So that's a great response time.
And so talk to that, because 39 minutes, we don't know what he was doing during those 39 minutes. And we also, I guess, don't know at this point if everyone was shot around the same time. Right. 39 minutes, though, you're saying is good response time.
That's a good response time for an apprehension, okay. Because you've got a base. He could have been hiding somewhere. He could have been contemplating what he wanted to do with his life. He could have been thinking about, well, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to be obvious and let them catch me. Don't know at this point. The investigation is going to be very interesting because they're going to answer all those questions. They're going to determine a motive. They're going to determine what he did after he shot, why he shot these individuals. Was it just the first 5 that he came across? Was one of the persons or more than one of the persons a target that he wanted to hit? What was the nature of this particular incident happening? They're going to find all those things out.
You know, so often in mass shootings, the shooter either takes his own life or is killed by police. But in this case, this shooter we know is now in police custody. So take us through what's likely happening right now.
So then you had an all alert manhunt for this particular individual. Once they got him into custody, they can assure the public as well as all of the military personnel that everything is safe now. We're not on lockdown mode anymore. So they would take him in. They're going to interrogate him, but while they're doing that, they're going to be talking to his family members, his friends, his neighbors. They're going to go through his go through his house where he lives. They're going to do all of that, and they're going to be extra careful because there have been times where bombs have been planted into the residence of these individuals and it's set up as a booby trap when law enforcement officials go in. So it's going to be a long, lethargic process that they're going to have to go through to try to get information out of him. Now, the compelling question is, did he want to get captured to try to make a name for himself and become what he would consider famous? Did law enforcement officials as well as military personnel find him and bring him into custody without incident? And as you said, a lot of times they'll take their own lives because of the cowardly act that they just committed and then them being cowards themselves. They'll take their own lives, and the court process, all those things are over with. So we've got a living, breathing suspect that we can talk to, that they can talk to, get as much information out as they can.
And the big other question that I have is, were there warning signs? Every time something like this happens, the first thing we have to ask is, could this have been prevented? Who did he tell? What did he say? Were there red flags? And, you know, we have a lot of military bases here on the First Coast, and we want to keep all of our soldiers safe in situations like that.
Well, you know, you prepare for things like this, but you never know when it's going to happen. You never know if or when it's going to happen. So you have to be reactive in this case. But when you talk about warning signs, we don't know enough about the suspect right now to see if there were any. Did he write? Did he write anything down? Did he talk to somebody about it? That's all a part of the investigation. Or was there warning signs that were ignored by certain individuals? Maybe if one of the 5 was a target, maybe he or she can shed some light on this particular individual if that person is known to them. So right now, a lot of unanswered questions that investigators are trying to get.
And that goes back to the motive. Was this something terrorist related? Was this a beef with an individual and there was collateral damage? Those questions we just have not answered. We don't have the answers, but we are expecting that briefing today at 3:30 from the base commander. What we do know is that 5 soldiers have been shot there at Fort Stewart in Georgia. That's about 45 minutes from Savannah. And we are working to gather new information. Ken, talk about the collaborative effort from all the different law enforcement agencies when something like this happens on a military base.
Yeah, so you have to have a collaborative effort for something like this because you want to deploy all available resources, air unit, ground unit, K9 unit, and just a lot of boots on the ground to try to secure the scene, secure that area, and find the suspect. All those things are prepared for, they're practiced, they have an agreement for it. When the military calls outside police are ready to go. They understand their job. The dispatchers are communicating with each other so there won't be any miscommunication whatsoever. They're communicating with each other, and the outside dispatchers are talking to their people, the military people, dispatchers are talking to them, and then they can collude together in an effort to find the individuals to secure the areas, to do all their due diligence. And that's why this went so well in a timely fashion, because they coordinated it very well. So this could be a training poster for other bases and law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, that's the good news. Speak to the lockdown today, because we know that it happened this morning, and then part of Fort Stewart the lockdown was lifted, but one part was still under lockdown, and now it's all been lifted. But when they have different areas lifted from lockdown, but other areas are still staying intact, what does that tell you? Was that possibly a search to see if there could have been another suspect?
Well, we don't know when the last one wasn't lifted, so the suspect may have still been at large. Don't know at this particular time. But when you've got a hot suspect, somebody that's not been captured, and you're looking for him, you want to lock down as much of the the interior as well as the outer, as many of them as you possibly can, as long as that suspect is at large, because you never know where they're going to go. You know, suspects have burst into people's houses, they burst into schools, armed, and they're armed and dangerous. So you want to lock it down, make sure they're all good, they're on standby, waiting for law enforcement officials to lift that up. So when you have, so they say that you had 4 areas of lockdown, and you release 3 of the 4. They're still searching, they're still looking, just to make sure, one, that as you said, there's not an accomplice, and 2, that particular suspect may have still been at large at the time.
And while the suspect has been apprehended now, the investigation is far from over. Now they're going to everywhere he's visited recently, his home, as you mentioned, and that part of the investigation just getting underway as they try to learn everything they can about him, his presence on social media, any potential warning signs. What do you think are the biggest takeaways at this point, just a few hours removed from this mass shooting?
Well, they're going to have a press conference at 3:30. That's going to give us a little more information, possibly more than what we have right now. Some of the questions more than likely won't be answered at this particular time, because the investigation is really just beginning, and it depends on the cooperation of the suspect. Is he going to talk? Does he want to remain mute? Exercise his Fifth Amendment right? Don't know at this particular time, but they're going to try to get as much information as they can. If he's not talking, then they're going to garner information from searching his home, talking to his family members, talking to his neighbors and friends, and whatever. They can get information that way that can lead them to things that they want to know that he may not say.
And at this point, do we know who is leading this investigation?
Well, it'll be the Army, because it happened in their federal jurisdiction. So it'll be the Army in cooperation with the locals. But the locals, the main thing that they have to do is write a supplement report as to what their actions were. That's particularly it. But this is the jurisdiction of the federal government, the United States Army. So they will take the lead on, the federal agencies will take the lead on this, and then the other agencies that participated just have to write a supplement report as to, I responded, I searched this area, that area, I knocked on this door, whatever they did, they have to put that in the supplement report. All that's added. So when the incident may be like this, but the reports are going to be like that.
Right. Everybody crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's. And at this point, looking at what has transpired today, you feel like everything has gone by the book as far as the response from police, from first responders? Based
on what I've seen and heard, it was executed perfectly. You know, they got the call, they responded, the outside agencies responded, and within 39 minutes, he was apprehended. The areas were cleared, the lockdowns were lifted. It was the perfect storm.
Okay, and more information going to be released coming up in just about an hour. And I think we have some new video. Jeannie, let's send it over to you.
That's right, we have some new video tonight. It was taken by somebody who was on the base. That video taken by somebody on the base. And what you're going to see in this video, it's very, very short. So because of that, we're going to replay it for you a couple of times. But it shows law enforcement just flying down a road. We're unable to read the street sign, but here's the video right now. We do know this is on the base. We apparently have slowed this down just a little bit so that you can see what's happening. That was during all of this chaos this morning, and then that is on the base as well. We've also gotten another piece of video, and that's going to show a soldier telling people on the base that they are now on lockdown. And this is from earlier today. Do we have that piece of video in? We do. Okay, so we can show this to you. He is saying that the lockdown is now lifted. So let's listen to that. Okay, I know that was a little bit difficult to hear, but he's saying that we're on lockdown. Do you need anything else? He's talking to all the people to make sure that they are sheltering in place and being careful. And I want to just tell you, just to catch you up if you're just joining us, the initial lockdown order from the military at Fort Stewart, as you're looking at this video there from on base, the commander has issued a lockdown in the 2 ABCT area, that's the brigade training area, for Fort Stewart, including Wright and Evans Army Airfield. Now we know that Fort Stewart, all of Fort Stewart, including Wright and Evans Army Airfield, they are no longer on lockdown. The all clear has been given for that whole area. But people were told to stay inside, to lock all their windows, lock their doors, close their doors, and keep their telephone lines open. So right now we want to go live now to our own Zach Wilcox. He has some updates for us from his end. Zach?
Yeah, Jeannie, we just pulled up here. It's about a little over a 2-hour drive to make it. What you're looking at behind us in the distance, admittedly, is the front gate onto Fort Stewart. Admittedly, we were expecting to see some sort of flashing lights or a police scene. Didn't see anything like that when we pulled up. It kind of just looked like a regular day. You can see some of the cars that are slowing down as they approach the gate behind me here. We checked in at the visitor's office. They told us to come to this education center. We'll show you that. Cool. If you can just turn a little bit more, we'll show you kind of where we're at. So this is the education center they have just off the base. They've asked us to meet with some of the leaders here, some of the officials here at 3 o'clock. Then they're going to bring us over to the gate at 3:30 for a briefing to give us all the information that they have. And so then we'll just show you if we can continue rotating a little bit further this way. You can see what we can see of the base itself. And again, what you'll notice is not any kind of flashing lights. I realize that we're a few hours removed from when this initially got on our radar, but not a scene that we can see from this far away. This is a huge base. We know it's one of the largest, if not the largest, east of the Mississippi. So I don't know the entire layout at this point. We just pulled up. The other thing I wanted to mention is we know that Liberty County schools up here in Georgia were on a soft lockdown throughout the day. That was lifted fairly recently, within the last hour or two. And while we were driving here, we actually passed through a couple of school zones, saw a lot of parents picking up their kids. I'm sure when they got the notification about the soft lockdown, they were concerned, but it seemed like it was kind of business as usual as kids were getting out of school. You know, with the first week of school starting here and already that soft lockdown for those parents and those families to deal with, but it seemed like now that that's lifted, business as usual for the schools. So now we're hoping to get an update again at 3:30 is when we'll hear from leaders here at Fort Stewart giving us the rundown as we continue to watch the front gate here and folks travel on in. But for now, we don't have a ton more information right here at the scene, but we should have some within the next hour or so. So I'll send it back to you up here at Fort Stewart. Zach Wilcox, First Coast News, on your side.
All right, Zach, thank you. And so crime and safety expert Ken Jefferson is still here with us. And Ken, from the outside where he looks, it looks like a normal day on the base, as you heard him say. Does that surprise you?
No. Once they clear it all, that means that they've done their due diligence more than once, just to make sure everything is clear. Once they give the all clear sign, things go back to normal.
And we have this video that we're showing, and in it, I believe it showed, well, you see police presence right here, but the video that we showed a minute ago, it looked like a lot of cars rushing towards the scene, presumably law enforcement headed there. Anything about the video or what we heard that stands out to you?
Yeah, you know, you would expect to see a lot of military vehicles going there, but what you saw in that short clip was the outside officers rushing to that particular scene. So that again, it shows the response that they had, and it shows the outside cooperation, because that's Liberty County police car there, and then you had some unmarked cars there that's rushing to the scene as well. So those are your other agencies that's coming to the rescue.
When you talk about preparedness for something like this, and we have military bases here, I think it hits home for a lot of our military families. Do the bases train regularly with the outside agencies to prepare to respond? Yeah,
they have to. You have to be prepared for these type of things, and you have to be prepared to be able to work together. You have to understand the call signals that the outside agencies have may not be the same as the military. So they have to work together so they get to know exactly how they communicate, what they're saying when they're saying it, even though they're primarily going to be talking with their own agency. But you know, you never know about a situation. It may come where you need to be able to communicate effectively with each other.
Yeah, and it seems like over the years, communication has been a big barrier between different agencies, between responses. But in this case, today, it does not appear that there were any communication issues.
And you're right. In the past, communication was a big issue, but unfortunately, because of these type of things that has happened, it allowed law enforcement agencies as well as military to improve on that process, to work on improving that communication process part of it. And it's unfortunate that we have had to have various mass shootings for us to be able to master that sort of thing. But they've got it down pat now, and it worked well together today.
And when something like this happens, the base now, the lockdown has been lifted there at Fort Stewart and the surrounding areas. Is there any protocol that happens after the lockdown is lifted, or is it just back to normal?
Well, they're going to debrief. Everybody's going to debrief. Everybody that was involved, they're going to debrief. They're going to look at what we did well, what we can improve on. They're going to talk about the response time. They're going to review all of this coverage that we're providing for them. Right. And they're going to critique how the information was shared out. they're going to appreciate, verify. Whereas when you put out what's false and what's true, they're going to do all those things, but things will go back to normal, and you can best believe that they're going to continue to do the training exercise for these particular type of incidents.
And I think sadly, every time there is an incident like this, we do have takeaways. There is stuff that law enforcement can learn, military officials can learn on how best to prepare, how best to prevent something like that from happening again. Is there anything else that stands out to you about what you've seen unfold today?
No, my heart and prayers just goes out to those 5 soldiers that were shot. We know that 2 were transported to the trauma unit. We pray for their speedy recovery as well. Hopefully they're not in the ICU unit for too long. But I understand what families go through when this sort of thing has happened, because it's just like a family member when you're a part of a group like that, the military, even law enforcement. So my thoughts and prayers goes out to those families and to those individuals that were injured in this situation.
Yeah, and I think it makes us all think twice, you know, hug your loved ones. You never know what is going to happen, and to always be prepared. And it comes back to, you know, police say it all the time, if you see something, say something. We don't know what led up to the shooting. We don't know the shooter's motive.
Right.
But it just gives us all a reminder to be cognizant of what's happening around us.
Absolutely.
And if there is something that stands out, to speak up.
Absolutely.
All right. We're going to go over to Jeannie now. Jeannie?
Ken, if you don't mind, Ken, you mentioned earlier about that sometimes in situations like this, the suspect puts bombs in another location, perhaps at a house, to lure police there and harm more people. I was just talking with Robert Bob Dodd. He's the Liberty County Emergency Manager, and he said that 73% of the military on Fort Stewart live outside of the base itself. So that might mean a home outside of the base. And so I think that plays into what you were talking about, how the situation may not just be at this one particular area where the active shooter was. They have to check out quite a bit, maybe even in the community.
Yeah, you know, when these type things happen and the shooter wants to wreak havoc, not in just the immediate area, but they know that law enforcement is going to be searching their home, talking to neighbors and families, whatever. They may want to try to kill some more people, and that's the way they try to do it. They set up a booby trap at their home. When law enforcement officers get there, open the door, a bomb can explode, killing more people. So these shooters know it, and you know, unfortunately, as these things continue to happen, these shooters try to become a little more creative than the other one, because they want to go down in infamy. You know, this one was actually caught. He's breathing. He's living. He's alive. So they can talk to him and try to get as much information out of him and see where his head is or was at that particular time. Was he going through some type of depression? Did he have anxiety issues? Did he just want to create this evil? Don't know at this particular time, but they'll find out.
Yeah, we found out a lot more coming at 3:30 at this press conference, but CNN has a new information detail that we have not heard yet. And there it is, breaking from CNN, that the alleged gunman is an Army sergeant. That's something that we had not heard yet. CNN reporting that the alleged gunman is an Army sergeant. We know he's in custody. We know he's alive. What does that tell you? He's had a rank, a military rank.
He had a military rank. He obviously had issues too, and we don't know what those issues are. But law enforcement officials are going to work with him. They're going to interrogate him. It's going to be a long interrogation. Is there a manifesto somewhere that he prepared? It's going to be, typically you hear this of no rank people if it's something that's going to happen on a military base. But this person was a ranked individual, was a sergeant. He was going through something. I don't know. Was he angry? Was he depressed? Was he on meds and didn't have his meds? All these questions need to be answered, and they're going to be asked during the interrogation, and we'll have to wait to see how it comes out.
So let's look at the clock together. All this started at 11:04, and now it's 2:38, so just a couple of hours, and within an hour now we're expecting this news conference. So you might wonder, what information can we realistically hope to get from that news conference? What do you think?
Well, they'll try to update us on what we don't know at this particular time, and they'll probably try to shoot down any rumors that was out there on social media and whatever. They may release the identity of the individual. We don't know that yet. We just know he was an Army sergeant. We don't have his name. We don't have any information on that, so they may be releasing that. And they may talk about next steps. What happens here now? They're going to reassure the public that the base is safe, as safe as it was before this happened. And these sort of things, Gene, you can't predict. You can't predict when it's going to happen. You just have to be prepared when it does happen. And unfortunately, people were injured during this time, and I hope that status remains injured and not died.
That's right, because we know we have 2 or maybe even 3 in critical condition. So I'm sure if I had someone on the base right now, I would be worried about, are they sure? I mean, they've given the all clear. Are they sure there's still not some sort of danger? What does it take for law enforcement or military police to declare the all clear? Does the shooter in this case, have to give a statement that I was by myself, and do they believe that? I mean, how do you know for sure?
Well, you're a mother, so you're gonna.
Yes, I'm gonna worry about everything.
You're gonna worry about. I know they said it's clear, but are they really clear? Until I hear from my lawyer, I understand that. I get that, but if the military and the police say it's all clear, trust and believe it's all clear. It's safe. There's no further or pending danger that your loved one would have to face or go through at that particular time. The only question that you may have would be, am I going to allow my loved one to stay there since this incident happened here? But it can happen anywhere, at any time. So we just don't know. You can't predict when it's going to happen. If we could, it never would have happened, because the law enforcement officials would be proactive to stop it.
Well, I mean, I can see the all clear if someone has died, if the shooter has died, but in this case, he's still alive. I mean, how do we know he didn't have an accomplice?
Well, he's in custody. The suspect is in custody, and the police and military have thoroughly went through their protocol to determine that he acted as a lone wolf. So at some point, you just have to trust what law enforcement and the military says.
All right, well, we'll go with that. We'll just keep those thoughts and prayers going to all those folks and doctors and nurses and everybody working on the 5 soldiers who are in 2 hospitals right now. And so, Heather, we're going to toss it back over to you. And you just heard Ken Jefferson saying that so often in these cases, when it's a military involved, there's somebody who's not of rank. And if CNN is correct in their reporting, their sources are saying that this is a sergeant. So perhaps we could ask Admiral Snyder about what he sees into that.
That's right. And Admiral Rick Snyder is on the phone with us now. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this continuing coverage. The fact that CNN is now reporting that the shooter was a ranked member of the military, a sergeant. Speak to that and your thoughts.
Yeah, so a sergeant is a mid-grade enlisted rank. It's typically one of the first positions where you get some sort of a leadership role. It's the 5th rank up in the enlisted community, so E5. Typically, they've been in the Army 4 to 6 years. They've been through some advanced training. They've probably been through a deployment or 2, and so they're very much the day-to-day on the deck or in the field leadership for some more junior soldiers.
We are expecting a press briefing from the base commander coming up in about 45 minutes at 3:30 this afternoon. What are the questions, the information you're looking for that you expect we will get answered in that 3:30 briefing?
I think a lot of what we're going to hear is confirmation from the direct source of a lot of the information we've been picking up from various places. There probably won't be a lot of new details, but there may bring some clarity to sort of what we've heard in bits and pieces, and hopefully some discussion about the steps going forward that are going to happen from an Army perspective, and it would be hopefully an update on the condition of those soldiers that have been injured at this point.
Right. We know, according to base officials, 5 soldiers have been shot, 2 of them taken to a trauma center. As you stand back and look, here we are just a few hours removed from when this active shooter opened fire this morning on the base there at Fort Stewart. What stands out to you the most?
You know, it was a very rapid and correct response. You know, with a gunman on the loose, 36 or 39 minutes can seem like a very long time, but given all of the variables in this, that was a very quick response. 5 people have been injured. If time would have been longer in between the occurrence and the response, we could potentially be seeing a lot more injured people. So I thought the response was very good, and the fact that this was limited to what we've seen so far, I think, indicates that a lot of the training we have been doing was successful. This rapid move to a lockdown or remain in place, shelter in place, had people do the right things, and people understood that, and I think that minimized the damages that came out of this.
Admiral Snyder, are you able to see our newscast right now? Can you see the video we're showing on the screen?
I can. It's typically a little bit delayed, so let me see if I can catch up to you.
Okay, so we're seeing a live look right now. Our Zach Wilcox and photographer Cole are there on the scene at Fort Stewart, and it looks like a bunch of soldiers there gathering. I believe, Zach, this camera set up near the education building. What do you make of this? Is this just typical training? Is there anything you can read into this video, this live picture at Fort Stewart?
It may be. I mean, typically when we have circumstances like this, as soon as information becomes available, leadership wants to talk to the soldiers and make it clear what they know, what they don't know, what's going to be happening next. So perhaps this is just a gathering for a debrief from leadership, or some sort of a muster to talk about what's going to be happening next.
And so walk us through, we know that military bases train for situations like this. After the shooter is in custody, and as we've been mentioning, it doesn't always happen like this. Oftentimes they end up dead, but this shooter is now in police custody. What happens now?
Yeah, well, as was mentioned before, with the shooter, there'll be a very set protocol to interrogate, find out what they can, make sure there's no other threat at, elsewhere at the house or at the unit, et cetera, et cetera. From the military side, it's really about reassuring your folks. This is a traumatic experience for everyone involved, going on lockdown, potentially having soldier mates of yours that have been injured. And so it's a reassurance that that the response was good, that things are safe now, that we're here to support you, and that in many cases you'll talk about we still have a mission to do. So you let the system work out, you let the investigation happen, and again, put your arms around everybody and make sure they're okay.
A mission that our military service members do so well. They still have a job to do, and we know they will get back to work. But when you talk about the mental health, and we do not know this presumed shooter's mental health, if this was a mental health crisis, if there was some ulterior motive, there are resources for our military members. We know PTSD is a real struggle for a lot of service members. Kind of just speak to the mental health aspect.
Yeah, as you alluded to, it certainly is a concern and has been for a while and has gotten a lot of attention, which is a good thing. And there are a lot of resources. There are resources both in the military and outside the military that are available to service members. There's hotline numbers for active duty service members, for veterans, for retirees, and of course a lot of civilian health care that's available. So the resources are there. We just have to encourage people to use them.
Absolutely. Admiral Snyder, thank you so much. And if you will stick with us, just to recap right now, we know that 5 soldiers shot this morning at Fort Stewart. Officials saying that the shooter is a soldier. CNN reporting a sergeant was the rank. And that man is being questioned right now by police while those 5 soldiers are being treated for their injuries. Jeannie, let's send it back over to you now.
Thank you very much. And we've been talking all day now for hours about how large this facility is. This area of Fort Stewart, one of the largest Army bases in the entire United States. And that's where our Zach Wilcox is right now. He's live. And Zach, this is our second time to talk to you. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, Jeannie, you mentioned because this base is so large, it's hard to have a full perspective, especially since we're not obviously going to be on the base today. We're just outside of it. I figured we'd show you the shot that you guys were just showing, I think, a little earlier while Heather was talking with Rick Snyder. And you can see this group that came out of the education center. And we heard somebody bellowing, if you will, bellowing orders at them, maybe just to get them to line up. But so that's kind of the main visual that we've had since we've been here. We know that in a few minutes we're going to have an official from the base come out and meet us and move us to an area closer to the gate where they're going to give us the briefing. I figured I'd show you the gate as well if we can turn here. It's amazing how fast all this happened, because we know that we started hearing about it around 11, and then we know that by 11:30 they had the shooter in custody. And then by about 2 o'clock is when they reopened the front gate here and lifted the lockdown. So when we first pulled in, it was about 10, maybe 15 after 2. So it was a lot of cars that were just now probably getting their access back onto the base that have been waiting for a couple of hours to try and get on. So there was a longer line. Now it seems like things are moving smoothly onto the base. We've adjusted a little here so that if we keep turning, Sorry to make Cole keep turning here, but we can see a little bit. That fence right there is the line, the property line to be on the base. So you can see a little bit on the base. A lot of cars moving around now that lockdown's been lifted. I'm sure folks are getting to where they've been trying to go really all late morning, early afternoon here, now that the gate has been reopened. But hopefully we'll have some more information to relay to you guys soon. Right now we can really just express what we've been seeing in just the few minutes that we've been here since we arrived. And as I mentioned, we passed by a couple of Liberty County schools. We saw some flashing lights there, and they're pretty close to the base. So we thought that it might have something to do with what's going on the base, but then it turns out that was just police directing traffic for the parents that were picking up their kids after those schools went into a soft lockdown for a couple of hours today as well. But again, the lockdown lifted here at the front gate, and this is really the only angle that we've been able to see so far onto the base. And we've got all these cars that are now slowly matriculating on through back onto the base after it was shut down. Really, the front gate was shut down for about 3 hours. So, and again, we've got the training center here, the education center. That's as close as we've been able to be, just outside of the base property line. And so hopefully here in the next couple of minutes, in fact, we're probably going to pack up and move a little bit so that we can be in a place for the escort to pick us up, to bring us on to closer to the base property toward the front gate, so that we can have that briefing for you guys and ask all those questions that we just heard you guys asking. Hopefully we'll get a lot of that information clarified, the reports that we're starting to hear about some of the details about what happened here. But for now, we're just kind of in a little bit of a waiting game, trying to see if we can get those updates for you. And as soon as we have them, obviously we'll be bringing them to you. But we will wrap it up here at Fort Stewart for now. Zach Wilcox, First Coast News, on your side.
Zach, while I still have you, do you have any sense on your position in comparison to where the active shooting actually happened?
Not at this point, Jeannie. That is something that I probably should be looking into here to try and get an idea of where everything is on the base. I admittedly have not been to this base before, so I don't know exactly how things are spread out, but maybe we can get a better idea of that, especially as we move around a little bit and kind of get a little bit of a better lay of the land. This is just the first gate that we were able to get to. Fortunately, it's the gate that we're supposed to be at for the briefing, but we can get an idea, because as you guys have mentioned, this is a huge base, so hopefully that'll give us an idea of how far away from this front gate we are to where the actual shooting happened and where that initial lockdown was.
Yeah, we understand it's what it's like to get on the scene for the first time, someplace you haven't been before, but we appreciate that, and we'll hear from you hopefully with a lot more answers at 3:30, and we'll be carrying all of that live and also on First Coast News Plus and on our website as well. Zach, so much appreciation for what you're doing up there. Thank you so much. And we're talking about how large this is. If you hadn't heard the statistic yet that we've been talking about, Ken, 10,000 people on Fort Stewart. That's civilian, military, and families. That's a huge base. And we were talking earlier, as you were pointing out, one of the first things you said when you saw the soldiers behind Zach right there was, see, they're out in the open. So you're smiling.
I wanted to reassure you that if they say it's all clear, it's all clear. I've been on that base before. It's been some years, but I've been on that base before, and you're talking about thousands of soldiers, and nobody was resting in their bunks when this thing happened. They put out an all alert for everybody, every available resource inside as well as outside to reassure that they did their due diligence and found this particular person that's responsible for what happened, and then clear all the lockdowns.
So we were talking with Admiral Snyder about what could possibly be done on the federal level to try to prevent some of these things. Looking back at the history of mass shootings, it's not just at military bases, but we all remember Fort Hood. There were 13 people killed by that Army psychiatrist. That was back in 2009. There's a whole string of these things. Yeah. I mean, from your law enforcement perspective, is there anything to do? That's the overall arching question here. The overarching question is, like, how do you stop this?
You don't stop it. You can't stop it because you can't predict when it's going to happen. You can prepare for it, and if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. They stayed ready. That's why they were able to respond the way they did. But there's no way you can stop it. If you could predict when it's going to happen, who's going to be responsible for it, it would never happen. So it's just an ongoing thing that we have to deal with, both on military bases and our schools and malls and anywhere in society. It can happen anywhere.
So prepare us for this news conference that's coming up now in less than 45 minutes here at 3:30, which we'll be carrying, of course, as we say, live. What is some information that they will not want to give out?
Some information that they may ascertain from the suspect right now, because they have a follow-up with certain things. if he's talking to them. We don't know if he's going to be cooperative or not. There have been some suspects that just became mute and exercised their Fifth Amendment right and didn't say anything. And by not saying anything, what they're saying is, you figure it out. You know, you figure it out. If you think I had issues, if you think I had a motive, you figure it out. Put your law enforcement degree to work, whatever. So they're not going to disclose everything because there may be a person or persons that they need to contact that they don't want to give a heads up on, that they're looking for them and want to contact them to try to get information out of them or whatever. But if I was conducting the news conference after this horrific shooting, my main objective would be to have already notified the families of those soldiers that were shot and disclose who they are, what their jobs were at the particular base. I'll always also want to update information on the suspect, give his name, who he was, what his job was, because now once he does that, the reporters are going to start scurrying to get more information out to release to the public. And I would also reassure everyone listening under my voice that the base is safe, it's secure, it's as secure as it was prior to this incident happening. You can go about your normal duties as best as possible after this incident. And I would entertain a few questions and just call it a day and update as needed.
Okay, well, we'll see what they do. I appreciate the layout and the preparation for what we're going to hear now in about 35 minutes. Let's go back over now to Heather, and she has a map. First of all, if you could start off by, for the folks who haven't seen this yet, show us where this active shooting took place.
Yeah, so this is a map of Fort Stewart, and if you look right here, this is actually a map of the base from 2018, but the location where we're talking about is still in the same area. The active shooter was in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area, so that's in the top part of the screen right up here. It's pretty hard to read, but I can tell you the 2 roads that surround this area where the shooting started of Fort Stewart are Vanguard Road and Rally Point Road. If you've ever been on base there, Fort Stewart, Georgia, about 10,000 people on base, as Jeannie has been saying. This is about 40 miles from Savannah, Georgia. And Admiral Rick Snyder is on the phone with us. I know, sir, you have to go in just a moment, but here we are 4 hours from when the first reports started coming in about an active shooter on Fort Stewart. Just your final thoughts as you weigh in and look at what unfolded there today where 5 soldiers were shot. Admiral Snyder, do we still have you with us?
You do. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Just your final thoughts. I know you have to hop off in just a moment, but your final thoughts as you weigh in on what happened here at Fort Stewart just about 4 hours ago.
Yeah, of course. First of all, a tragic event, and we'll be thinking about those that were injured and everyone else involved that were victims of this. I think the response was really good. As mentioned, it was a large base. There's lots of people on there. They have weapons available, and yet in a very short time, they were able to apprehend the suspect, get the people that needed it to medical care, and then open up the base again to reassure everybody. But it is also a great reminder that we do need to remain vigilant, that unfortunately things like this can happen anywhere at any time, so we have to be vigilant and aware of our surroundings. And then just this cooperation with the local community is always great to see. But my last comment is, of course, thoughts and prayers for the victims here.
Absolutely. Our heart goes out to all of those soldiers, all of the families who are being notified that their loved ones have been shot today. Again, we know that 5 soldiers shot this morning. It all started just before 11 o'clock this morning. Admiral Rick Snyder, thank you so much for your time, for your insight. And I just want to walk our viewers through a timeline of events as it unfolded today. It was 10:56 this morning when law enforcement was first dispatched for a possible shooting in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team Complex there at Fort Stewart in Georgia. Then about 5 minutes later, Fort Stewart is placed on lockdown due to a shooting threat. Emergency medical personnel dispatched to treat those wounded soldiers at 11:09, so 5 minutes after the base was put on lockdown. And then 39 minutes after we believe the first shots were fired, that shooter was apprehended. He is alive, according to CNN. He is a soldier. He has the rank of a sergeant there at Fort Stewart. What was his motive? What were the circumstances leading up to this? Those questions we do not know, but there will be a briefing with the base commander scheduled for 3:30, so in about 30 minutes. And the shooter in custody, 5 soldiers right now at the hospital being treated for their injuries. And the lift down there at Fort Stewart and the surrounding areas has now been lifted. The all clear has been given. We have our Zach Wilcox, who's on scene. Rick Scott. Okay, and we want to thank Admiral Rick Snyder for joining us today. He has to hop off. But Jeannie and Ken, I'll send it back over to you.
All right, thank you so much. We are glad to have we still have Ken Jefferson, always faithful here, staying with us for hours and hours on end. And we did this the day of the FSU shooting, and they're similar feelings of like, oh my gosh, not again. So here we are again. And this affects our military community. We were talking with the state senator up in Georgia, and he was saying how much it hit them so hard. And I was reminding him, of course, and he knows this, but in Jacksonville, we have a huge military community as well, and people are feeling this, and their hearts go out to them. And look at some of this video with me right now, Ken, then we can ask you about it. We're getting a new look at some of the aftermath of the Fort Stewart shooting. Now, what you're seeing now is this is video that just came into our newsroom. It appears the soldiers are evacuating the buildings on the base. This was a while back, moving into other areas. This is when the lockdown was going into effect. We also have some new videos showing military police. They have their guns drawn. This is outside Fort Stewart. You can see right there. They are standing outside a police SUV at one of the gate entrances to the base. Our Zach Wilcox just came in. He said a little bit after 2 from the main gate. And he said at that point the traffic was really backed up and they were flowing into that gate. And that's where he is now, waiting for the news conference, which you can see there on the screen starts at 3:30. And right now we are hearing the moment the dispatchers in the Fort Stewart area were actually told that there was a shooting today. You're about to listen to a series. We have 3 first responders dispatch calls, all within a 90-second period. So with all those bunched in together, let's take a listen to that. Okay, I've just been told by our producer that before we show this to you here, we have a doctor who is actually speaking right now. Let's listen in.
Preparing to take on critical patients like those patients from Fort Stewart likely are. Can you walk us through the process of what y'all go through when you get a call that you have gunshot victims coming in is?
Absolutely. And that's really what sets a trauma center apart from non-trauma hospitals that have emergency departments. We are expected to have a very vast array of resources ready before the call comes in. So when we get a call, whether it's a gunshot wound or somebody fell off a ladder and the EMS people think they're critically injured, we get a phone call that says they're coming in 15 minutes. At that time, that phone call goes out to an attending trauma surgeon, a critical care fellow who is a resident completing more training, 2 surgery residents, usually a surgery nurse practitioner, 2 specially trained ER nurses, a respiratory therapist, a radiology tech, and a pharmacist. And they all are expected to be waiting for the trauma patient before that person hits the door. So you can imagine how much resources have to be put into that and how much preparation. We also have blood available in the emergency department in a cooler right there, so we can give people blood instantly if we need it. Our blood bank can give us the next 6 units of blood within 20 minutes of that person rolling in the door, with us having the first 2 units available immediately. So here's a plug, guys. Give blood. We need it. So go out there and give blood. What else can I tell you about our trauma system?
I'll ask you a quick question. If you're just joining us now, you can't tell us any specifics about their condition in there, but tell me what it's like when it comes to treating somebody that is a service member. Is there a heavy weight that comes with that? Treating somebody who has signed up to serve our country? I know you treat everybody the same, but there's got to be a different feel in that ER right now.
Absolutely. Savannah is well known to be a military community. Our program director, our trauma program director, my boss basically, completed a naval career prior to becoming our trauma director here. And we've always had a very deep connection with the military. It adds a couple of things. There's usually more people to talk to right? The commanders are allowed to ask some details that, like, other, if your boss came and asked this stuff, we couldn't tell you. So we have to talk to multi-level people. We also get a great deal of support. They all come in with a buddy, so there's always somebody there with them, which is real touching for us. But yeah, we really care about our military.
And being the only level 1 trauma center here in the area, what does that mean when things like this, incidents of this magnitude happen? How does that affect your staff and your readiness, and you guys being the only ones who can do the job?
Well, we have to be available all the time, and we have to have the resources there all the time, which it costs money. I mean, that's really you imagine all those people just being ready and waiting. We do other stuff between traumas. We take care of the patients that are already admitted, but really it's a great deal of resources that are in preparation. We are the only trauma center between Charleston, Jacksonville, and Macon. That is a huge catchment area, and people come in from across the street, and people come in from hours away, and we have to be there for everybody. And the number of our major traumas has gone up since when I came here 20 years ago. We did 1,200 major trauma admissions a year, about 2,000 admissions. Like, they're not really sick enough to be called trauma, but they get admitted to the trauma service. We're up to over 2,500 major traumas last year and almost 4,000 total admissions. So it's, as the population grows, so does the number of people that get hurt, and we're there to provide that service to the community.
Doctor, over the past couple of weeks, we've had a shooting at Oglethorpe Mall that required people to be treated here at Memorial. We've had this shooting on Fort Stewart today. You and your staff and everybody that works in this emergency room to treat gunshot victims, is there any, are they tired of having to treat gunshot victims? And I don't mean in the sense of they don't want to do it anymore, but is there any frustration seeing this continually come through your emergency room?
Well, it's always sad. We would all love to be able to, like me, I'd love to go teach scuba diving. That would be my dream, right? If no more people got injured, I could find something to do. That being said, gunshots often, and of the type we see, are young. It's just really sad, and we would like to do everything we can to prevent that. We are involved in the violence interdiction program, where we try to cut the cycle of violence when you have a shooting that may be gang-related, to try to go out and prevent the cycle of shootings. So we're involved in that stuff, and that's one of the things that Level 1 trauma centers have to do, is be part of trauma prevention programs, and we're very proud of that. So yeah, I would absolutely love it if people would stop shooting each other.
And specifically treating a gunshot wound, today some people were presuming might be some gunshot wounds, as well as incidents we've seen in the last couple of weeks. What specifically goes into that?
Well, honestly, treating gunshot wounds can be the type of injury that requires the most technical expertise but the least amount of thought, right? If you are in a bad car accident, you can be injured and us not really see it. It can all be invisible and inside and internal bleeding. Gunshot wounds, honestly, you can think about it as there's a hole, sorry. Everything in between those holes has a hole in it. And you literally need to stop the bleeding or sew up any leakage of any other things that could be leaking, like your intestines and stuff. So it's actually, it can require good technical expertise, right? Somebody's bleeding to death, you have to stop that bleeding right away. But honestly, it's almost the least amount of mental exercise that we have to do. And we are very good at stopping that bleeding. So patients that hit the trauma bay door, if we know they're coming, we meet them at the door. They can get blood within 2 to 5 minutes if they need it, and we can get them into the operating room and operating on them in less than 15 minutes, which is a requirement for a trauma center. So we can really do that quickly. We're very good at that. And that's really what it entails. It's deciding right away if somebody's bleeding enough or has something injured that needs an operation, and getting them from the trauma bay, where we do that assessment, to the operating room where we actually fix the problem as fast as we can in a safe manner.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We just want to thank you for all you're doing for those service members inside. I definitely noticed.
All right, that was Dr. William Bromberg from the trauma center here at Memorial Hospital. He was unable to talk about specifics as to the condition.
So you've been listening to that press conference there from Memorial Hospital. We were explaining earlier that 2 of the soldiers who were shot, some reports say 3, were taken to that level 1 trauma center there at Memorial Hospital that's off base. And we were also explaining earlier that the car ride's about 45 minutes, but they did go by ambulance, and that took a short amount of time, 30 minutes. They wanted to go by chopper, but the weather was not good enough, so they took 2 of the soldiers critically injured at the shooting at Fort Stewart today to Memorial Hospital. He did talk a lot about all kinds of requirements to go in trauma, to become a trauma unit, but what I found that was really interesting is he said that they have to be able to, if it's necessary, to operate within less than 15 minutes when someone first arrives by ambulance. They have 2 to 5 minutes to get blood to them if they need it right away. The first 2 units have to come from a cooler, and then if they need 6 units, that has to be given within 20 minutes, so they are still maintaining their license as a trauma center. So that shows you that possibly these soldiers have gone through quite a bit with a lot of medical care. He explained the medical team is huge that meets them at the door, and so of course the hope and the prayer is that these 2 soldiers who had, or 2 or 3 soldiers who had to go to Memorial at the level 1 trauma center have gotten the great care that they say they have and have pulled through. As of right now, we know that all 5 soldiers are alive. That's what we've been told. At 3:30, we hope that news still stays the same, that we haven't had any loss of life. Let's talk now with Ken Jefferson, who is our crime and safety analyst, and he's getting ready to watch this news conference with us at 3:30 this afternoon. And I know it was difficult to hear everything that was being said there at the trauma center, but the doctor was explaining what they can do immediately for people coming in, and that might be the extent of those injuries. Pretty serious.
Yeah, if they're in the trauma center, that means that their condition is more than likely critical, and they need immediate team help, which is what a trauma center does. From having transported people there myself personally, as well as following an ambulance there, excuse me, to see exactly what they do. In a matter of time, it's usually a team of 6 or 8 people, all on that one person immediately as they come in.
And so the trauma center that we have here, UF Health, has been here for quite a while with our level 1 trauma center here. He mentioned Jacksonville as well. So can we go back to what we were talking about? You were going to watch with me a little bit. There's Memorial Health, where we were just talking about with the doctor, and the critical care that they can provide and have apparently provided in this situation. But we want to go back now to the dispatchers. Producers, can we do that? Great. We were in the process of listening to that when that news conference came up at the hospital, so we went to the hospital. But now let's go back to the moment that dispatchers in the Fort Stewart area were told about the shooting today at Fort Stewart. So what you're about to hear is a series of 3 first responder dispatch calls, all within a 90-second period. And so if you take a listen with us right now.
Mag Station 1, mutual aid request for a gunshot wound on Fort Stewart. It'll be building 8422nd Brigade, 8422nd Brigade, gunshot wound, mutual aid. There's possibly 5 patients. They have both of their EMS trucks on scene. The scene is clear. Everything is secure. We don't know who has what. Multiple people injured. Yeah, I am landline with Fort Stewart on the 911 call. They have an active shooter on Fort Stewart.
Okay, so in case you're just joining us, let's not make any mistakes here. There is not an active shooter on Fort Stewart right now. We are told that Fort Stewart, the all clear has been given for Fort Stewart, Wright Army Airfield, and Evans Army Airfield. They are all in the clear. We know that the shooter, at last we heard, was still alive, under arrest, and taken into custody. But let's take a close look now at today's events and how they unfolded. At 10:56 this morning, local time in the Savannah area, about an hour from Savannah, law enforcement was dispatched for a possible shooting in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. That is kind of off to the side of most of the activity of Fort Stewart. By 11:04, the area was put on lockdown, including several schools just outside the base. They locked down out of an abundance of caution. Now that lockdown at the schools as well, that's over. Kids are safe. Emergency crews arrived and were treating the injured soldiers at 11:09. And then by 11:35, you see there on our timeline on your screen, the shooter was arrested, That's 39 minutes after officials were sent to the scene. Fort Stewart lifted the lockdown of the main area at 12:10. So let's now talk with Ken Jefferson about that. And you said you don't see any flaws in how this was all handled, as tragic as it was.
No, they handled this, if I can use the word perfectly, they handled it perfectly. They responded in a very timely manner. They knew where to go because they had been practicing or having training exercises along with the military. You have an abundance of military personnel there, so you were not lacking bodies or resources to be able to use to hunt this person down, as well as to render aid to those that were injured. They transported them to the hospital, and then they went back and they started securing all of the scenes and lifting the lockdowns. They did everything right.
So we've been talking about how the suspect, the shooter in the situation, the alleged shooter, it seems like all the media outlets are reporting that it's a male and he was part of the Army. So apparently shot his colleagues. But CNN is reporting, and this has been CNN's reporting, that their sources say that he was a sergeant. So that kind of takes it to a different level. And we were talking with Admiral Snyder, and he said that for a sergeant, that is the 5th rank up in the enlisted community. Typically, a sergeant will have been in the military 4 to 6 years, been on 2 or 3 deployment missions, and in the field, or on the deck if you're on the Navy, but in this case in the field in the Army, is a leadership position. So that may say a lot.
Yeah, even though he was in a leadership position, nobody at this point knows what he was going through or what caused him to snap, if you will, to commit this horrific act. So a lot of unanswered questions. Maybe some of those questions might be answered during the press conference at 3:30. I don't know. I don't know what level of information they want to release right now, because it is an ongoing investigation. So even though you've got a suspect in custody, even though you secured and cleared all the areas, it's still an ongoing investigation. And sometimes there are things that they don't want to disclose, where it seems, well, the lay person would say, well, wait a minute now, he shot 5 people, they're in the hospital, you apprehended the suspect, he's in custody, you cleared the area, why can't you tell us everything? Well, that's not how it works. You got to do a thorough investigation, because he's going to have to stand trial or confess or work out a plea deal or something. He's going to have to go through the judicial system, and you don't want to be caught with a half-shot investigation because you got all these things working in your favor. You still have to do your due diligence as law enforcement to make sure you dot all your I's and cross all your T's. So
let's talk about the protocol as far as, would they call a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, a sister, a friend, and have them come into the investigative area, a police station or the base, or how far out does that web go?
Are you saying the relative of the suspect?
Yes.
No, they will visit them. They will go to them in most cases. They won't wait for them to come to the base or wherever they want to conduct an interview. They will go to either their place of employment or where they live and tell them we've got some very important questions that we need to ask you, and brief them on what happened and expect to get cooperation for them. So
they may be doing that right now.
They are.
Yeah, they are doing that.
I would bet you they are doing that right now.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right now, let's go over to Heather. I think she has some new information to share. Thanks, Ken.
Sure.
All right, Jeannie, we are monitoring all the information coming in about this active shooter situation that unfolded a little over 4 hours ago there on the Fort Stewart base in Georgia. I want to tell you, we just got a new piece of information from NBC News. We are awaiting a press briefing that's going to take place at 3:30 this afternoon. The new information just being reported by NBC News is that they have been speaking with 3 senior law enforcement officials, briefed on the matter, telling NBC News that the person who allegedly opened fire at Fort Stewart does have prior ties here to Florida. We are working to get more information. We do not know if that alleged shooter's name, is going to be released at the press conference at 3:30, but we do know that the alleged shooter, was taken into custody about 39 minutes after the first shots were reported to be fired there on the base at Fort Stewart. As you've been hearing, we heard the trauma center doctor speaking, saying that they weren't able to give us information on the soldiers' conditions who are at that trauma center, but we know at least 2 of the soldiers were transported to the Savannah area to be treated at that level 1 trauma center, which means the injuries likely are severe. There are 3 other soldiers that we believe are being treated at a non-trauma center. We have not gotten any updates on their condition. As far as we know, all of those who were injured are alive and being treated. But again, that news conference is coming up in about 12 minutes. We're going to be carrying it here live on First Coast News and firstcoastnews.com. We do not know what led up to today's shooting. And so a lot of the questions we still have is why? What is the motive? Were there warning signs? Could something have been done to prevent this? And as you've been hearing our crime and safety analysts, Ken Jefferson say, and Admiral Rick Snyder, the response looks to be like it was by the book. Nothing stands out as far as the response goes other than it went according to plan. This is file video. This was from earlier today on the base. The lift down there at Fort Stewart has been lifted. You saw earlier fire trucks and ambulances and police departments, police cars rushing into that scene to assist the military police with the investigation and to get help to those 5 soldiers who were injured. 2 of them, at least 2 of them, taken by ambulance due to the weather. They couldn't put the chopper up to that level 1 trauma center. And so we are still working to get more information about who this alleged shooter is. He is alive. He is in police custody. We imagine that he's being questioned by police as to whether or not he's speaking with them or giving them any information. That we do not know, but NBC News citing 3 senior law enforcement officials who were briefed on the matter saying that the accused alleged shooter has prior ties to Florida. Which part of Florida? We're not sure. We're working to get that information. But again, that press briefing is going to happen in 10 minutes. And this is video right here as you see the ambulances pulling in to the hospital earlier today. Jeannie?
So let's talk a little bit about Ken Jefferson. With Ken Jefferson, he is adjusting some technical equipment for us to make sure he can hear clearly when this press conference is going to go on, because you'll be able to give us some insight about what you've heard from the Army base there. But if this shooter does have prior ties to Florida, as NBC is now reporting this new information, they say it's from 3 law enforcement officials briefed on the matter. Those ties, I'm sure people are going, well, what would those ties be? We don't know for sure, but what could they possibly be?
Don't know. Don't know. What
could have been at a base here, maybe, or
could have been
lived here.
Could have been just lived here, worked here,
could have
have family here.
Anywhere in Florida.
Yeah. So if they're reporting it now, we may get clarification at the news conference.
That's true. And then as far as medical updates, what are the laws as far as the military and working with law enforcement? What can we find out? I know there are HIPAA concerns about the conditions. What do you expect?
The only thing they're going to tell you is the condition. You know, our status, if you will, stable, critical, or whatever. They're not going to go into detail with it because of what you just said, HIPAA laws.
Yeah, I remember after the FSU shooting, we had a whole team of doctors that were at the trauma center, were at the hospital when those students and people were taken there, and they were very careful. They didn't talk about the certain wounds. They wouldn't even say where on their bodies they were shot, and they had to obey the law.
And you know, they have to be very careful with that in disclosing that private information, unless a patient signs off on it and say, yeah, you can say whatever you want to say about me, but they're going to err on the side of caution and stay away from that.
Talk to us about the tech world now and how the tech world is involved in hunting down the information. I picture people on computers right now trying to delve into all his social media, any ties he might have to international terrorism groups. We don't know if that's the case, but what's going on behind the scenes?
Well, they have units that specializes in that sort of thing. When this sort of thing happens, you've got a team of workers that's doing all of that tech work. So you got a lot of moving parts going on at the same time, Jenny. You got your field force, the people that's on the boots on the ground that's conducting the searches and the apprehension. Then you've got your detectives that's going to come in to interview and interrogate the individual. Then you've got your technical officers that's doing everything cyberly, if you will, checking social media, checking his background, doing an in-depth background search on him. As they get that information, they shove it out, and those officers are on the ground going to those different areas to investigate and look into what they can find. You know, of course, social media is the easiest thing that they're going to start with, but all of the other in-depth background stuff, that's what they're doing now.
Well, we're talking about the United States military. I mean, this is a big deal. So what other law enforcement groups from around the world would be involved?
Around the world, I'm not sure, but you know, you got your local, regional, and in this case, your national that's involved. with this. The whole world is watching to see how it's handled, and so far they're getting a 5-star rating on how they handled everything. And as the days go on and as the investigation go on and as they release more information, they'll be graded on that as well. But from the looks of it, they have prepared for an incident such as this. They were ready for it. They responded accordingly based on their training and experience and expertise. And they've got a suspect in custody in record time, 39 minutes. You know, there was nowhere for this person to hide by. But let me just add that even though that's one of the largest bases there, which means that they've got a large population of soldiers there. There weren't very many places he could hide and get away with it. So,
well, we often hear about suicide by cop. In this situation, suicide by another military member. He knows, as you're saying, that he's not going to get away with that. He's in a contained area. He's behind a fence or in a building, possibly. Admiral Snyder was saying this area where the shooting happened can say, oh, I'm going to stop my sentence midway because our producer's telling us that we have a report from NBC, and as I'm hearing it in my ear, the shooter's identity is now being given Cornelius Radford with prior ties to Florida. So let me repeat that because I'm hearing it in my ear along with you just right now at this very second. The shooter's identity, according to NBC News, has been confirmed to be Cornelius Radford with ties to Florida, prior ties to Florida. Again, we don't know what that means, but some sort of link to the state where we live, and
yeah,
not excluding our Georgia viewers, but.
Yeah, we're not sure what his ties are or were. Maybe he was stationed here at one time or the other at one of our military bases, or maybe he has family here. We'll find out.
Yeah, we're going to find out more at 3:30. And then also, so back to what we were talking about before, the ties and the law enforcement gathering, the cooperation between the military and the technical expertise in the federal government now has to be going full force.
Oh, it is, and it has been going on since this incident happened. It's not just starting. And some of the information that'll be revealed at 3:30 is probably will be a result of some of that information that has already been gathered. You know, it's very unfortunate that not so long ago we were talking about the same thing, a mass shooting where an individual takes a weapon and just start wreaking havoc on individuals for no good reason. There's no good reason why you're just going to start shooting down people as they're in your way or your target, if you will. Maybe we'll find that out too if these individuals, or one or two of them, were targeted by this shooter. So there's a lot of unanswered questions right now that we're talking about. We don't have the answers to, but hopefully we'll find out.
Would it surprise you, for all the work you've done behind the scenes with people who've done violence to other folks, that he would not have some sort of manifesto or writings on social media, that he'd be just completely a dark horse and nobody knows what his thoughts are?
It would surprise me if he didn't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it would be hard to think that he just woke up this morning and said, I'm going to shoot people.
Mm-hmm. And right now we're taking a live picture right now at the news conference area there at Fort Stewart. Our Zach Wilcox is there with our photographer getting ready to broadcast that live for you in less than 3 minutes. They're outside one of the main gates of Fort Stewart, and we are hoping to get lots more information for everybody. I'm sure you all have questions. We don't know how much information will be given, but obviously they have something to tell because they have gathered everyone there outside Fort Stewart to give us information at 3:30. And I've never seen them call a news conference that they just don't say anything and say no comment, so we know they're going to give out some sort of details. So,
yeah, they'll give us. There he is.
Okay, someone's at the podium, but that's probably they're getting everything set up. That's typical for a press conference. And Heather, what do you see from your end over there?
Yeah, Jeannie, I was just looking through social media, and I just want to reiterate this statement that Georgia Governor Brian Kemp put out a couple of hours ago, just saying, as we remain in close contact with law enforcement on the ground, he says, Marty and the girls and I are saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart. We're keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. And we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same. And I think everyone who hears this story about what unfolded on a military base this morning, just before 11 o'clock this morning, our hearts go out to those soldiers. Let's go live now to Fort Stewart for the update from the base commander.
last name is Tomko, T-O-M-K-O, and I'm the spokesperson for the 3rd Infantry Division. Today we're here to discuss the incident that took place earlier today on the north side of Fort Stewart installation at the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team footprint. In just a moment, I'm going to introduce you to Brigadier General John Lubis. That's spelled J-O-H-N, Lubis, L-U-B-A-S. He's the Commanding General of the 3rd Infantry Division. Brigadier General Lubis will make a statement regarding the incident and take a few brief questions. Before we begin, however, I'd like to go over just a couple things with you. We have limited time for questions given that this is an ongoing investigation, and we may not have all the information that we can share, but we will try to be as transparent as possible. We will not release the name of any victims until the next of kin notification has been complete. We will not speculate as to any intentions, motives, or backstories, given that this is an ongoing investigation. When you ask your questions, we ask that you please give your name and the affiliation in case we need to do a follow-up. And it's a little hard to hear, so please speak up so that General Lubis can hear you and that you can hear him. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will now turn it over to General Lubis.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. This morning, shortly before 11 o'clock, an active duty soldier assigned to Fort Stewart, Georgia, shot and wounded 5 of his fellow soldiers here on Fort Stewart. Thankfully, all are in stable condition and all are expected to recover. The alleged shooter is in custody. We have reestablished security. I have lifted all lockdown measures on Fort Stewart, and there is currently no threat to the local community. I'd like to recognize and thank our Army law enforcement and medical personnel and our partners from local, state, and federal law enforcement and emergency services for their quick response and support. I would also like to thank the brave soldiers who immediately intervened and subdued the shooter. These soldiers, without a doubt, prevented further casualties. Our wounded soldiers were initially evacuated to Wynn Army Community Hospital right here on Fort Stewart. All arrived in stable condition, and 3 of the 5 required surgical intervention. 2 have been transported to Memorial Hospital in Savannah, Georgia for additional care. We have identified the alleged shooter as Sergeant Cornelius Radford, an automated logistics sergeant assigned to 2nd Brigade Combat Team. Sergeant Radford has not previously deployed to combat. Sergeant Radford has been interviewed by the Army Criminal Investigation Division and is currently in pretrial confinement, awaiting a charging decision by the Office of the Special Trial Counsel. Right now, our primary focus is first on caring for our injured soldiers and their families, and also supporting the soldiers of the Spartan Brigade. All of the families of the victims have been notified, and we're wrapping our arms around them and ensuring we provide them all the support that we can. Before I take questions, I want to remind you that this is an ongoing investigation, and we're still gathering questions. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll now take your questions.
General Lewis with the Coastal News. Can you give us his what unit he was assigned to and how long he served in the Army, if you didn't mention that?
Yeah, he is assigned to one of our sustainment units here in 2nd Brigade Combat Team at Fort Stewart, and I will have to confirm how long he served with us. Yes, sir.
Russ Bynum with the Associated Press. As best you can, knowing it's so early, can you walk us through where this happened, what happened in the shooting, and were the victims subordinates of the sergeants, or were they people over him in rank?
Yeah, right now it's premature, and we're gathering a lot of the information. What we know is this soldier, the shooting occurred at the soldier's place of work. It did involve his co-workers. We're still not certain about the motivations, but again, he's been interviewed by Army investigators, and we believe we'll gain more information here shortly. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. We don't have any reason to believe it had anything to do with a training event. Other than that, I can't state the motivations for this soldier.
We've heard that the shooter
Yes,
may
sir.
have been from Jacksonville, Florida. Are you able to confirm that? We also heard that he had maybe been arrested for DUI recently.
Yeah, at this point, I can't confirm where he's from. We can follow up on that. I do believe he was arrested locally for a DUI that was unknown to his chain of command until the event occurred, and we started looking into the law enforcement databases.
Robin, now from the current, can you tell us whether or not that was a military weapon or whether this is a personal weapon that the person brought on base?
Yes, ma'am. I can confirm it was not a military weapon, and we believe it was a personal handgun. Yes, sir.
What does this mean for ongoing security measures that this situation was able to occur with a personal weapon?
Yeah, I'm very confident in the security of this installation. We've got a great partnership with local law enforcement. As you can see here at our gates, we have armed guards in protective equipment. This one's a bit difficult, and we're going to have to determine how he was able to get a handgun to his place of duty.
Alicia Way News for Jack. Has the suspect had any prior disciplinary or behavioral issues on base?
No, ma'am, not that we're aware of. But again, it's early in the investigation, but not that I'm currently aware of. I don't have the details on that, but I know that his soldiers in the area that witnessed the shooting immediately and without hesitation tackled the soldier, subdued him, that allowed law enforcement to then take him into custody.
And we've got time for one more question.
I know that you can't speak to the motivation, but if this turns out to be some situation where somebody had extremist beliefs or maybe classified as a terrorist attack, I mean, how does that change the base's response and the base's investigation moving forward?
Yeah, currently we have no reason to believe any of that is the case. However, we continuously assess the threat environment, both in the immediate area and across our Army and DoD installations, and we will address the threat level accordingly. Yes, sir, he was a sergeant. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your questions, and again, thanks to the local responders and the local community for their help. Thanks and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, I'm going to give you the proper spelling.
So let's start with the good news, Ken, and that is all 5 soldiers shot are expected to recover. They're in stable condition. So that is an answer to a lot of people's thoughts and prayers right then and there at the top of that news conference. We were just hearing now from Commander General of the 3rd Infantry Division, John Lubas. He gave us an update on what happened with the active shooter situation today at Fort Stewart. Let me go back over some of these notes, and I'll stop and start, and you can give us some comment as you heard that. We had told you earlier that CNN was reporting that he was a sergeant. Indeed, that was confirmed right then. He said he was an automated logistics sergeant, never deployed to a combat area, but they did mention that he'd been in some trouble with the law there locally in that area, had a DUI, and his chain of command did not know about that.
Right. So we learned the name, the confirmed name, and we learned his rank. We learned that he shot his co-workers. Still short of a motive, don't know the motive yet. And we learned that he was involved with law enforcement by being arrested with a DUI that the command did not know about at that particular time. I don't know when it happened. Did it happen 2 days ago, 3 days ago, and he hadn't told them, or he was trying to keep it away from them. So we're learning a little bit more about the shooter.
And then we don't like to report anything that we haven't confirmed, but you all heard it because it was right there at the news conference. Somebody asked him, well, I heard he had ties to Jacksonville, Florida. That was not confirmed. We don't know that yet, but it was asked, and everybody heard that at the news conference. We also learned that he did not use a military weapon. He was using a personal handgun.
Yeah, the general confirmed that it was not a military weapon, but he also confirmed that he's going to find out how he managed to get that personal weapon into his workplace. So obviously they have rules and restrictions on personal weapons. We know that at a military base there are many weapons, but they're not supposed to be personal weapons there.
How could that be a security breach? How could that happen?
That's what he's going to find out.
Yeah, he's going to find out, exactly. Yeah. And also he talked about some verification for us because we had heard that maybe 2, possibly 3 people had been taken to Memorial Hospital, which is a level 1 trauma center in Savannah. He confirmed that 2 of the soldiers were at the level 1 trauma center at Memorial. 3 of the 5 have had some kind of surgery, but all the families have been notified of all the soldiers who have been shot now, so now they can start interrogating and talking to the suspected shooters' families.
Absolutely, absolutely. And he said that they're all expected to recover, so that's good news as well. That means they're in stable condition, their vitals are stable, and they're all expected to recover. And the general and law enforcement will not wait for a status on the victims before they talk to the family. After he was taken into custody and they identified him and managed to do a background on, that's when all that starts. They don't wait for those things because, you know, if family members had prior knowledge of, they may want to flee and you can't get any information out of them. So once they learn who he is and do a background check on him, they're immediately going to family members, friends, neighbors, place of residence, and all those places and get started immediately. And that's why he wasn't adamant, but he was firm that it's still an ongoing investigation, and they prepped everybody as to what not to ask because this is all the information that he's going to be able to give out.
Yeah, and they made the point to give his name clearly. The shooter's ID is Radford Cornelius with prior ties to Florida somehow, but we still don't know what yet. But it is interesting that he has not been deployed to a combat area, but he did shoot co-workers at his place of work.
We don't know how, he didn't say how long he'd been in the Army as well, so maybe it just hadn't been time for him to be deployed to a combat area. I don't know those military rules as far as that's concerned, but he made it a point to say that he had not been deployed to a combat area. Maybe he said that to show that he was not specifically a proficient shooter or trained in that area of combat. I don't know, but he did make it a point to say that.
And the Commander General, John Lubis, said also as well that he is talking to law enforcement or police units who are asking questions of him now. He is talking to investigators.
So it sounds like he's cooperating with law enforcement officials. And sometimes, you know, suspects or cooperators, they want to get closure for themselves. They know they committed an horrific act. They know that they're going to have to be held responsible for it. They know that they're going to have to suffer the consequences for it. And sometimes in their remorse, if he has any, but sometimes in their remorse, they just want to let it out and cooperate and be very repentful for what they've done.
And as we're listening to this, you're wondering, or I am as a layman, how do they approach the questioning at this point? I mean, you've got to be very careful so you can get all the information and not have him clam up or tell lies or whatever. What is the strategy? I know you've been in those interrogation rooms.
Yeah, I've been in interrogation rooms and I've interrogated suspects. You know, you want to get them in a talking mood. You ease into the questions. You ask some questions that you already know the answers to in the beginning, just to see if they're going to be forthcoming to you. They know the answers to a lot of the questions already, so they'll ask those questions and see how cooperative he wants to be. And then they'll ease into the serious questions that they want to get answers for.
And so as we're kind of wrapping this up from the news conference here, as a law enforcement professional, as an expert in this field, what are, say, the 3 things you just heard from that news conference that you think are the most important at this point?
Number one, that all of the soldiers are expected to recover. Number one, they're all in stable condition. Number 2, we have the information on the suspect that they need to conduct a thorough investigation. And number 3, he's going to be held responsible for everything he's done to wreak havoc on these families.
And if there is any breach in the security, he had a personal handgun on a military base and shot co-workers, so that is going to be debated and definitely investigated.
You're going to be caught in the crosshairs of the general as to why that weapon got on the work site.
Are there pat-downs when you go on, metal detectors, or I know you're not on a military base, but...
It's been years since I've been to this particular base, and I went in uniform, so I wasn't pat down because I had my sidearm on my hip. But he wasn't a civilian. He was a soldier. They're not going to pat him down. They're not going to frisk him or do anything like that. They're going to let him through the gate.
You and I had a discussion earlier before we found out all this information. I think the question is still relevant, is that he knew he wasn't going to get out.
No, he couldn't.
He had nowhere to run.
No, he's in an isolated area. This is a naval base. It's a huge naval base. He could have picked some places he wanted to try to hide, but they've got thousands of soldiers there. He was going to be found. dead or alive, he was going to be found. Had he committed suicide, they would have found him. Had he continued to go from place to place to hide, they were going to find him. As they searched the areas of this particular base, as they cleared it, they lifted the lockdown on that particular area. So that means that there was going to be cornering in on this particular suspect. But it didn't take them very long to find him.
And you're right, you've been saying for a couple hours now, obviously they believe they have the one person that they needed to have in custody, and there is definitely not another dangerous threat out there.
You know, they wouldn't hold a news conference with all these civilians around being very vulnerable if they thought there was another suspect that they were looking for. They wouldn't have even gathered everybody. They would still be continuing looking for somebody and telling the press, hold off, we're working, we'll give you information when we can. But they feel confident, they know that he's a lone wolf, and they've cleared the area and the base is safe.
And you were talking earlier about how it could be that sometimes these suspects plant dangerous devices, perhaps bombs or incendiary devices, at a mother's home or their residence outside where they were doing the shooting. But they cleared the community and said early on, hours ago, that the community is safe.
Yeah, so as I said, as this happened and as soon as he was taken into custody and they identified him, that's when all that stuff happens. All those searches and things began. Had there been an incendiary device somewhere where he lived or a family member, we would know by now because they've already been there. And right now, they're as we speak, they're talking to family members, they're talking to neighbors to try to find out more information about this individual. And they may even be coming to Jacksonville to talk to some people once if they confirm that he does have ties to Jacksonville.
We'll see, and we don't know that yet, but there's some sort of prior tie to Florida, and we don't know what that is yet, but definitely people will be looking at that. So all 5 soldiers shot at Fort Stewart, we are told, are going to make it. 3 have had surgery, 2 have had surgery rather, nope, 3 of the 5, let me correct that, have had surgery. 2 at a level 1 trauma unit, which made us a little nervous this afternoon because we were concerned if they might be in critical condition, but we're told they're stable and they're going to make it. All their families know. The alleged shooter is in custody, active duty at Fort Stewart, had his own personal gun. So I believe I can toss it over now to Anthony Austin. He's been preparing some information for us as well, and some good news from this news conference, Anthony.
Some good news indeed, Jeannie and Ken. It's good to hear that the 5 soldiers who were shot will recover. And we want to take a look now at some video we've been receiving into our newsroom this afternoon. We have a new look at some of the aftermath of the Fort Stewart shooting. This video into our newsroom just moments ago. The video posted to TikTok showing soldiers moving through the base under lockdown. And new video showing military police with guns drawn outside Fort Stewart. You can see them standing outside a police SUV at one of the gate entrances to the base. And let's take a closer look at how today's events unfolded. At 10:56 this morning local time, law enforcement was dispatched for a possible shooting in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. By 11:04, the area was put on lockdown, including several schools just outside the base who locked down out of an abundance of caution. Emergency crews arrived and were treating the injured soldiers at 11:09, and then by 11:35, the shooter was arrested. That's 39 minutes after officials were sent to the scene. And Fort Stewart lifted the lockdown of the main area around 12:10. So right now, we're hearing the moments that dispatchers in the Fort Stewart area were told about the shooting. So you're about to listen to a series of 3 first responder dispatch calls, all within a 90-second period. So let's take a listen right now.
Mag Station 1, mutual aid request for a gunshot wound on Fort Stewart. It'll be building 8420 2nd Brigade, 8420 2nd Brigade, gunshot wound, mutual aid. There's possibly 5 patients. They have both of their EMS trucks on scene. The scene is clear. Everything is secure. We don't know who has what. Multiple people injured. Stand by, I'm landline with Fort Stewart on the 911 call. They have an active shooter on Fort Stewart.
So we have some more video now. This is showing more of the aftermath of the Fort Stewart shooting. It's kind of hard to hear what they're saying in this video, but a police officer is warning people to stay in their cars. areas of Fort Stewart, that's near Savannah, just to let you know if you're just now joining us. That's about a little over 2 hours from where we are here in Jacksonville. They were put on lockdown for some time, the commander telling people to stay inside, lock their doors and windows until the suspect was in custody. And we're also hearing from a former FBI special agent in charge, Richard Frankel, on the Fort Stewart shooting in Georgia, and also the response time. That we're having some audio issues there. So that was the FBI agent who was in charge. I believe we can listen to it now. So let's go ahead and go back and listen to what he had to say. It appears we are still having issues with that soundbite. We're going to get that fixed, make sure it works, and then we'll bring that to you a little later. We do have an interview, I should say, some sound with a former NYPD detective. His name is Robert Boyce, and he's going to talk a little bit about the Fort Stewart shooting.
Part of these investigations, Jay, is to see the after action. It comes later on, and the critique of the events. Could we have seen this coming? Is it anywhere possible? And how can we prepare better? You got to remember, these are special people. These are the people who defend our nation, both here and abroad. And so they're specially trained and exposed to things that nobody else has. So they really have to be treated differently. This is unlike a civilian operation here. You're on government land. You have security issues there. Where was there failures in this? Failures to see this, failures to see where the gun came from. And right now, but by 5 compared to the Fort Hood.
Go to a retired 4-star general now who visited Fort Stewart just 2 weeks ago. He was also the division commander at this base from 2011 to 2013. He spoke about where the shooting happened. Once again, this happened in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area, which he says it's someone removed from the main base. Let's listen to more about what he said.
That's right. So inside this little compound for the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, there's barracks facilities, there's headquarters facilities, motor pools, a gymnasium, a dining facility, a small medical clinic, but there's no schools, there's no family housing, there's none of those other things. That's all on the main cantonment area. This particular compound was built in the late 2000s as part of the expansion of the Army. It was completed and delivered to the Army in June of 2011. I know that because I was there when we received it and the first unit moved into the facility.
All right, so if you're just now joining us, we did just have a news conference not too long ago from Fort Stewart. They updated us that the suspect in the shooting at Fort Stewart that injured 5 soldiers has been identified as a male Army sergeant. His name is Cornelius Radford. The good news in all of this, the 5 soldiers who were shot, we've been told that they were co-workers of Radford, but they will recover from their injuries. So that's the good news. No deaths have been reported in this tragic situation at Fort Stewart. I want to send things now back over to my co-anchor Heather Crawford, along with our crime and safety analyst Ken Jefferson.
All right, Anthony, thank you so much. And we're going to check in with Ken in just a moment. But our Zach Wilcox is there at Fort Stewart. He was at that press briefing just a minute ago. As we've been reporting, NBC News is saying that top law enforcement officials saying that this suspect, this sergeant based there at Fort Stewart, has ties to Florida. Is it ties to Jacksonville? We're trying to work to our sources to get information on that. But let's go now out to Fort Stewart, Georgia, where Zach Wilcox is standing by with the new information that we just heard from the Brigadier General. Zach?
Yeah, Heather, and hopefully we'll have some of those questions answered here as we work our way through the day. I did ask after the briefing if Sergeant Bradford, the suspected shooter here, had any injuries from the shooting or being taken into custody, and a lieutenant colonel mentioned that as of right now, that's a bit unclear. So that's another question that we're trying to work out. We do know that he's cooperating at this point, answering questions, so just don't know if he's injured. I'm going to step out of the way here so that we can show the front gate. We're a little bit closer. We're right behind the front sign. The front gate reopened right after 2 o'clock, or maybe right before 2 o'clock. So cars have been working their way in. Actually, we're seeing more and more working their way out at this point. And earlier, Jeannie asked me where this shooting happened in relation to where we are staged, the media here. So this is the front gate, really the most southern tip of the base. And at the very north right end, the northeastern end, if you will, is where the shooting actually happened, at an annex. And I actually talked with one of their public affairs officers who mentioned that you have to go straight through the base, all the way through the town center area, all the way to the other end, almost leave the base and then come back in to get to that annex. It would be about a 10-minute long drive, he said, about 5 to 6 miles, which just goes to show the sheer size of this base to get over to that other end. So we're really nowhere near where the shooting actually happened here at the front gate. We know that all of the gates reopen right around 2 o'clock. So it seems like a lot of folks who work at the base are able to kind of get about their day now at this point. But as you mentioned, still a lot of questions that we're trying to answer. But really the thing that we're going to lean into is that we found out from that Commander General that of the 5 that are injured, they're all expected to be okay. Their families are aware of their situation. We know that 3 did have to require some sort of surgery, but they're expected to recover as well. So that is certainly good news, as Anthony mentioned, for this tragic situation here. And we'll continue to bring you any updates we have from the base here as we're set up right at the front gate. At Fort Stewart, Zach Wilcox, First Coast News, on your side.
All right, Zach, thank you for that update. And I want to bring in now our crime and safety expert, Ken Jefferson. Thank you so much for sticking with us and for your expertise. As we just heard the commanding officer of the base say that this is the accused suspect who is in police custody is a sergeant, and that this shooting happened in his workplace. And that he had not been to a combat zone. Mental health obviously is a question that we have. Was he having a mental health crisis? What led to this point? But the fact that he worked there where he opened fire, just weigh in on that.
You know, workplace violence is not something unusual or strange. It happens all the time. Usually it could be domestic violence in the workplace. It could be active shooter. It can be a number of things. You know, was he upset with his superior? Was he upset with his coworker, one person, and it led to him shooting 5? You know, those are questions that have going to have to be answered as we dig deeper into what he's all about. He's a sergeant in the United States Army. He's working with other soldiers, and for some reason, he just opened fires. He opened fires. Does he have mental issues? Did he have anxiety issues? We don't know. We don't know. We just got to wait.
We do know that he has not served in a combat zone, according to the Brigadier General who was giving us the update. And the question was asked, did he use his military weapon? And the response was no. We believe that he used a personal handgun.
Yeah, and I could tell by the tone from the general when he said that he was not pleased with that, simply because he even said, we're going to find out how he managed to get a personal weapon into the workplace. So, you know, he's a soldier, so he's coming through the gate. They're not going to tell him to get out of the car and hold your hands up so we can frisk you. He can almost smuggle anything he wants through the gate. Once he's through the gate, I don't know if there are any precautions leading into the workplace that would detect that he has a weapon or whatever. He could have possibly left it in the car if he had to go through some type of scanning device and ran out to the car and got it quickly before it could be detected. We don't know. It's still a lot of questions that's unanswered there. But it's going to be interesting to see how this investigation develops and what comes out of it. The good thing is he's cooperating with law enforcement officials while he's being interrogated. And as I said earlier, Heather, he may want to just get it out of him. You know, he's committed this horrific act, and he could have had immediate remorse. And now he just wants to get it out. Yeah, I did it. I'm responsible for it. I know I have to suffer the consequences for it, but let me get it out.
Now, we know that 5 soldiers were shot, but one of the things that stood out to me in that press conference is the fact that the Brigadier General said, if I heard him correctly, this sergeant's co-workers, once he opened fire, tackled him, and that's what led police to be able to quickly arrest him.
Yeah, and that stopped him from shooting other people as well. So those are your heroes right there. It'd be interesting to see if one of the ones or more than one of the ones that was shot actually tackled him, or was it others that was watching, saw the event unfold and then they tackled him. But those are your real heroes right there, because he would have killed more people or shot more people in this case than the 5 he did.
Yeah, it's You know, here we are, this all unfolded just before 11 o'clock this morning. As we approach the 4 o'clock hour, new details coming out, new information coming out. And I go back to what NBC is reporting is that this suspected shooter having ties to Florida. We are working our sources right now trying to figure out where in Florida, what were the ties, is he from this area? Does he live here? We know he was stationed there at Fort Stewart, and he has the rank of a sergeant. So a leader in the military today accused of opening fire on his own co-workers. I mean, it's a shocking situation.
Yeah, and once we confirm what his ties were to Jacksonville, we can delve into him just a little bit more. Right. As far as his background is concerned, you know, right now we don't know if he was stationed here, if he lived here, does he have family here, did he work here in a non-military capacity of some sort. But if it's confirmed that he does have ties to Jacksonville, then that's another whole story that we'll be talking about.
And I guess when you look at the good news of what happened here today is that you believe that the police response was right as it should have been, that they quickly got to the scene, quickly put that base on lockdown, got the injured treated, and it went by the books today.
Everybody was right on point, right on point. They have the multi-agency agreement for things like this, where your outside law enforcement is going to come in and help. And as I said earlier, you've got thousands of military personnel there. Right. You can best believe that an alert went out, put everybody on alert, that we've got an active shooter in our midst. We need all hands on deck, and he was not going to get off that base.
That's right, and he did not. He is in police custody. We are going to return you to regular programming for those of you who are watching us on First Coast News. However, our live coverage will continue right now on First Coast News Plus. It's our streaming platform available on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. And then we'll be back here on First Coast News tonight for First Coast News at 5. But again, 5 soldiers recovering right now after being shot, according to the Brigadier General, by their co-worker, a sergeant stationed at Fort Stewart. Our continuing coverage continues right now on First Coast News Plus.
This has been a First Coast News On Your Side special report. First Coast News is always on. Stream now on First Coast News Plus.
And thank you for staying with us for First Coast News Plus. I'm Heather Crawford, joined by our crime and safety expert Ken Jefferson is with us. He's been with us all day long, and my co-anchor Anthony Austin, as we're continuing to follow the developing story. An active shooter now in police custody after the Brigadier General and police telling us that he shot and injured 5 soldiers, 5 of his co-workers this morning at Fort Stewart. Okay, my producer's talking in my ear and telling me to send it over to Anthony Austin, who's going to continue now. Anthony.
That's right. So Heather, as you just mentioned, we do have our Christina Burgess, who has arrived there in Georgia. She's standing outside one of the hospitals where we understand those soldiers were taken. Once again, Christina, the good news this evening, those soldiers will recover.
Yes, Anthony, that's right. 2 out of the 5 soldiers who were wounded on Fort Stewart's military base were brought right here to Memorial University Medical Center. Now, it is the level 1 trauma center located here in Savannah, Georgia. And by being a level 1 trauma center, that means that they are equipped to provide the highest level of trauma care. It is also one that is located in between Charleston, Jacksonville, and Macon. Now, around 3 p.m. today, Dr. William Bromberg came out and he spoke with the media, and he provided updates in regards to the work that the staff does inside. Now, again, with this being a level 1 trauma center, he says that they are equipped to act fast and quickly.
All right, so Christina there once again giving us an update from the hospital. All of those soldiers, they will recover.
That is right. And we are just getting more information about the shooting at Fort Stewart. And we have a graphic. If we can pull this up, I want to verify the details that we have at this hour. Here is what we know. 5 soldiers have been shot. This happened when the first gunfire erupted just before 11 o'clock this morning on the base at Fort Stewart, Georgia. This is about 40 miles away from Savannah. 5 soldiers have been shot. We know that 2 of them were taken to the trauma center in an ambulance. all 5 expected to survive, according to the Brigadier General. And this all happened on the base. It happened in the accused shooter's workplace, and that shooter was arrested. We heard the commanding base officer say that he was tackled by his co-workers, allowing police to quickly take him into custody. Now, what is, okay, we're going to work on updating the rest of that graphic. But right now, that shooter is talking to police, being questioned. And Anthony, I mean, I think when you hear about something like this happening, this is in a secured facility on a military base, not too far from Jacksonville, just a couple of hours away. It just resonates and it hits close to home, thinking about, you know, what unfolded today. And the good news is he's been arrested, and those soldiers, we understand, are going to be okay.
And the gun that he used during all of this, we found out during the news conference, this was actually his own personal weapon. This was not a military weapon that he used to commit this shooting. So there's a lot of questions right now. How did he get his personal weapon on base? I know Jeannie and Ken, they were talking earlier about this. He is a soldier. He was employed there. That's not someone you would probably usually pat down in a situation like this. So I'm not sure if they were aware that he had his personal weapon with him. But once again, this was not used with a military weapon. This was his own gun that he used to shoot 5 of his co-workers, 5 of his fellow soldiers. So some information that we've been getting. If you were listening to the news conference, you heard someone ask, was he from Jacksonville, Florida? Because we're hearing that he has ties here to Florida. That has not been confirmed yet, but we know his name is Cornelius Radford. He is an Army sergeant there at Fort Stewart. Once again, he's accused of opening fire on the base before noon today, where his place of work on base when he opened fire, once again, was where he was working there. This particular spot on the base, we're kind of told, is kind of far removed there from the main campus. But we're trying to get some more information about why this happened. Why did he do this? We don't know why just yet.
Yeah, and we want to bring in our crime and safety expert, Ken Jefferson, who's been providing phenomenal insight for us today. Ken, one of the things that we learned in that press conference today is that this alleged suspect had been previously arrested for a DUI. We believe that happened there in Liberty County, Georgia, and that the commanding chain, his bosses, his superiors, were not aware of that until after this shooting unfolded today. Do you make anything of that?
Well, without a deep speculation, you know, if he's previously been arrested for DUI not very long ago, that may be a continuation of issues that he may have had. He may have been drinking, drowning in his sorrows or whatever. I'm not saying it is, but that could be a part of him snapping today. So it could be an ongoing effort for him to try to get out of whatever he's in or whatever type of issues that he was having. And he just got to his last straw and pulled out his weapon and started firing that weapon.
And we heard a reporter ask at the briefing just a few minutes ago, did he have any behavioral issues? Was he known to have behavioral problems? And the Brigadier General said no.
And those are the puzzles that need to be puzzle pieces that need to be put together, because from the surface it sounds like he had it all together. Kind of similar to the shooter at the FSU campus. It seems that he had it all together, and all of a sudden he just did what he did. But I would pinpoint, I would put a needle on the DUI, the recent DUI that he had. He may have been depressed. He may have been having some personal issues that he was trying to figure out or trying to go through. The fact that he didn't report it, which he's required to do, report it to his command that he gotten arrested for DUI, speaks volumes as well. Because obviously, in my opinion, he's going through something, and he's compartmentalizing it, and it came out today.
Right, because we know he was a logistics sergeant, and he's never seen active combat.
Right.
Because I know some people might be asking maybe if this was a situation of PTSD, maybe he had been through something recently, but we know that he's not seen active combat.
So the general said that, made that statement to kind of end that speculation that it's possibly PTSD. I think that's why he made that point. Otherwise, it was no need to make the point that he had never been in combat. So I like the way the general conducted the news conference, because he gave out as much information as he could. He answered a couple of questions that we didn't have, and now everybody's scurrying, getting information, getting his background information, getting family information, looking on social media. Before the general released all of this information, trust and believe they've already done that.
Right.
They're not going to let us get ahead of them.
Right.
They've already done that. Once they identified him, that's when the wheels started to roll with them doing all of their things. And not only that, my last point, he was a logistics sergeant, which means that he had to be focused all the time on the task at hand. And with him being a supervisor or a sergeant, he had to make sure his people were focused and on task all the time as well for that particular type of job.
And Ken, just kind of walk us through, now that he's in custody, now that the lockdown has been lifted, where does the investigation go from here?
So all the things that we've been talking about, they're going to talk to family, friends, neighbors, co-workers. They're going to dig deep and deep and deep into his background. They're on the way to Jacksonville, or they're in contact with someone here in Jacksonville looking at that aspect of it. You know, you want to make sure that there hadn't been another crime committed here in Jacksonville, and this is the finalization of his spree, if that was the case. But they look into all of those things. So the investigation goes forward from there. Now you've got an active crime scene that's still there. I'm certain it's still roped off because they've got to collect and preserve all the evidence, all of the shell casings, and they know what type of weapon he used because they said it was his personal weapon. So they have to put all that stuff together. Even though it looks like it's open and shut, you still have to dot your I's and cross your T's and do every single thing that you would if he was at large.
And we're working right now to confirm where in Florida he had ties to. NBC reporting that he had prior ties to Florida. So we're trying to track down where, if he was living in this area, and we're hoping to have more information just as soon as we get that. We're also hearing right now from a retired four-star general who visited Fort Stewart, where this happened just 2 weeks ago. He was also the division commander at this base from 2011 to 2013. And he spoke about where this shooting happened this morning. It was in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area, which he says is somewhat removed from the main base.
That's right. So inside this little compound for the 2nd Armored Brigade Tomcat Team, there's barracks facilities, there's headquarters facilities, motor pools, a gymnasium, a dining facility, a small medical clinic, but there's no schools, there's no family housing, there's none of those other things. That's all on the main cantonment area. This particular compound was built in the late 2000s as part of the expansion of the Army. It was completed and delivered to the Army in June of 2011. I know that because I was there when we received it and the first unit moved into the facility.
And so, Ken, will military police be handling the bulk of this investigation? Do you know for sure? Do you think they'll turn it to an outside agency there in the
They're not going to give it to an outside agency. It's going to be federally investigated by the feds. The outside agencies that participated, the main thing that they have to do is write what we call a supplement report that outlines their actions, what they did when they got there, what time they got the call, what time they arrived, and what did they do once they got there, such as being on the ground searching for the suspect or handcuffing him or bringing him in, whatever they did. But because it's the federal government jurisdiction, they'll be the ones that will be handling the primary lead on the investigation.
Right.
And I imagine in the days to come, in the hours to come, we're going to hear more about those heroes on the base, serving our country and yet jumping into action, according to Brigadier General John Lubis, who said without hesitation, they immediately tackled that sergeant and subdued him so he could be taken into custody.
They saved lives because he had a hot weapon, and we don't know what kind it was. We don't know how many rounds he had, but he could have, I'm certain he had more than 5.
Right.
He had more than 5. So they stopped him from going out and shooting and injuring or killing others by their actions.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
We are glad to hear about that. We want to go to Zach Wilcox now. He just arrived at Fort Stewart not too long ago. Zach, just kind of tell us where you are right now and what you're seeing at this hour.
Yeah, Anthony, we're at the front gate, which is really the farthest portion of the base away from where the shooting actually happened, but this is where they staged us to talk with the Commander General. So I'll step out of the way so we can just take a look at what the front gate looks like at this point. No flashing lights or anything. In fact, when we got here, I was kind of surprised not to see any kind of scene, but perhaps it's because we're so far removed from where the shooting actually happened. One of the public affairs officers mentioned it could actually be about 5-6 miles from here at the farthest other end of the base. So, but you can see some cars working their way in. We've seen some officers or some folks in their uniforms just outside here at the visitor center as well. A lot of cars now starting to make their way out. But as you mentioned, we got a ton of more information here within the last hour or so that we didn't have before, and a lot of unanswered questions still. They did mention that they have spoken with the suspect, but they mentioned that he used what they believe to be a personal gun, and they were very clear, the Commander General was, that this was not any kind of training exercise that was going on. They have no reason to believe that this was part of training in any capacity. We do know that it involved his co-workers and that it was some other members of or people who were on the base that were able to tackle the shooter, get him under control, and we know that those 5 who were injured, 3 of them required some sort of surgery to address their injuries, but all 5 are expected to be okay. So now around 2 o'clock is when they reopened the front gate here, and the rest of the gates, they kind of lifted that lockdown. And we saw a lot of traffic initially trying to get back onto the base because this is such a big base, a busy base. So we're really being shut down for about 3 hours there. Certainly held a lot of people up that were trying to get on there. So now they're able to get back to it. And I also want to mention that on our way up here, we passed by a couple of schools. Liberty County Schools had a soft lockdown during this. So when we passed through, we saw that they were doing dismissal, and it seemed to be operation as usual for the 2 schools. We passed a middle school and an elementary school as well that seemed to be back. They had lifted their soft lockdown and they were letting kids out of school. Obviously, first week of school, so already kind of a hectic time for a lot of families. Then you add that on top of all of this. But again, the thing that we're really focusing on here is that all 5 of the injured soldiers are expected to be okay. And the other thing that we're looking into is if this suspected shooter had any possible connections to Jacksonville, and or Florida in general, and that's the thing that the Commander General also mentioned that they are looking into at this point as they try and speak with him and try and piece all of this together. The other thing that was brought up is security for the base. He mentioned that they have armed guards here at the front gate, checking people, making sure that they're going where they need to go, and making sure that they have the proper authorization to get on the base. So that's the thing that they're really looking at, is how a believed personal weapon was able to get through security and get on the base. So a lot of things that they're looking into right now, and a lot of things that we're trying to clear up as well. But again, the 5 people who were injured are all expected to be okay, and that is the biggest development here within the past hour or so. At Fort Stewart, Zach Wilcox, First Coast News, on your side.
All right, Zach, thanks for that live update from Fort Stewart. So we want to verify some information as we continue to learn information about this shooting that unfolded just before 11 o'clock today at Fort Stewart in Georgia. Here are some additional details that we can verify at this hour. The Army identifying the suspect as Army Sergeant Cornelius Radford. We're told that he does have ties to Florida. We're working right now to learn if any ties are to Jacksonville or to the First Coast area. We can verify 5 soldiers have been shot. It all happened this morning. The Army confirms all 5 are now stable. And that brings us to what is false. None of the victims have been identified at this time publicly. We do understand that their next of kin have been notified. However, the military has not released the victims' names. Now, during the Army's press briefing at 3:30, just a little under an hour ago, about 45 minutes ago, they confirmed that they would not release the names of the victims right now. But we do know they are all co-workers of the suspect. And right now, the big question is, what is the motive? What led this shooter to open fire on a base this morning? And we do not know his motive, but we know that police, that the military, lots of people right now working to try to lead up, figure out what led up to today's events, and figure out the motive so that something like this can be prevented from ever happening again.
So what's happening right now, and they might be beyond this right now, as Ken mentioned, of course, they have probably more information than we know right now, but we know the Army's Criminal Investigation Department is interviewing Cornelius Radford. That's the soldier the sergeant who's been identified as the shooter, and he is in custody right now, awaiting criminal charges under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So we don't have a lot of other information right now, but we do know, once again, the 5 soldiers who were shot, they will all recover. 3 of the 5 needed surgery. And 2 were taken to a hospital in Savannah. But once again, they are all expected to be okay.
And Ken, I mean, just such good news that they are going to be okay, because this, as we've seen with lots of other mass shootings that I've covered, could have ended a lot differently.
That's the best thing that could have happened out of this whole situation. And who knows, we'll learn more about how they tussled the suspect and tackled him and held him until police arrived to execute the arrest. I mean, he could have had the gun and while they were tussling and still shooting around, but that's the best news out of this whole thing. If you can get anything good out of it, no one died, and they're all expected to recover fully.
And you know, when you talk about a mass shooting on a military base, it raises the questions about base security. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, usually the bases are the most secured areas that you can enter, particularly as civilians.
Right.
But this is an unusual case. This was a soldier. This was a guy that worked there. He was probably in uniform, or if he wasn't, maybe the guards knew him. But they know he's military because he's got a sticker on his car when he goes to the gate, and they'll salute him as he comes through there. But it still raises the question, like the general said, he had a personal weapon, and he's got to find out how that weapon made it into the workspace, to the workplace.
Right, because they're not allowed to bring their own personal weapons on base at all.
You've got hundreds of thousands of weapons on a military base, and you don't need a personal weapon.
You don't need your personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of speculation now, but why would he use his personal weapon? Would he have access to a military weapon? I guess we really don't.
I don't know. My guess would be it would be too obvious if he was going to get a rifle or a pistol, because he'd probably have to check it out from somewhere. And the questions would be, why would you need this and this, that, and the other? So it's the easiest thing, and I'm speculating, the easiest thing would be to do is to smuggle his own personal weapon in there and use that.
And you know, when we talk about the suspect, it's not just a soldier, a leader in the military, a sergeant who had climbed up the ranks, making it to this position of sergeant. And the Brigadier General saying just a little while ago that this happened in his workplace involving his co-workers.
Yeah, he was a leader. He was a supervisor, if you will, on civilian terms. He had subordinates, obviously, and they probably didn't think anything. If he pulled the weapon out and they saw it, they probably didn't think anything until he started shooting. But yeah, you don't expect that sort of thing to come. You know, we hold certain people in certain positions higher.
We do.
And that's one of the positions, a military sergeant serving our country to protect us, me and you. And he pulls out a weapon and he starts to shoot his co-workers. You never suspect that sort of thing.
You never suspect that. I'm sure when they went to work today, they did not think that this was going to happen.
No.
We want to hear from a retired 4-star general now with ties to Fort Stewart. He's going to describe the differences between units in the U.S. military, especially in the Army and combat units.
You know, we have 10 active duty combat divisions in the United States Army. The 3rd Infantry Division is one of those. Secondly, it is a armored division. The name is 3rd Infantry Division to pay respect to its historical legacy, but it is, for all intents and purposes, an armored division with 2 Armored Brigade combat teams with about 4,000 soldiers equipped with M1A2 Abrams tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, Paladin 155 millimeter howitzer guns, and all of the support vehicles that go along with it. The 3rd Infantry, this particular division, earned its name and fame as the Rock of the Marne in going back to World War I. Right after it was stood up, it deployed to France and then stood under intense German pressure, and that's where they earned their moniker, Rock of the Marne, because they stood like a rock on the Marne River against 5 attacking German divisions. The same division participated in all 5 campaigns in the European Theater of Operations in World War II. Deployed units to Korea, had elements in Vietnam. And then, of course, probably most famously, the 3rd Infantry Division led the spearhead attack of U.S. Army Central Command, Army Central, in 2003, the attack into Baghdad, right? So everybody remembers that lightning fast attack. And then the Thunder Run, the famous Thunder Run in Baghdad, that was all 3rd Infantry Division. That's the list, the history and the legacy. That's this unit. They are the armored fist, or a portion of the armored fist for the Army's Armored Corps.
So that was a general that we were listening to just kind of talk about the differences between when it comes to combat in the U.S. military and also the Army units as well. So once again, the suspect in all of this has been identified as Sergeant Cornelius Radford. NBC right now is actually reporting that he is from Jacksonville, but we're working to confirm that for ourselves and that he actually joined the Army in January of 2018. But once again, that's just from NBC. We're trying to gather our own information right now to confirm all of that. The 28-year-old is listed as an automated logistical specialist assigned to the 2nd Brigade Combat Team there at Fort Stewart. And as we've been mentioning, he had no deployments.
Right, and I can tell you the databases that I've been looking at, there is someone with that same name, with an address listed here in Jacksonville. We've not independently confirmed that he lived here or that he was from Jacksonville, but that is what we have been hearing. And I want to bring back in our crime and safety expert, Ken Jefferson. And Ken, after the shooter was apprehended, you said that in a situation like this, the immediate threat is mitigated. However, I imagine police are going to everywhere where he had lived, his family's home, because you don't know in situations like this, could there be another threat that he left behind somewhere else?
Yeah, they're always going to check that. They're always going to, even though you've got a warm body in custody, you got to look all around just to make sure there are no accomplices, make sure there are no booby traps where you found him, no booby traps where he lived. You're going to talk to everybody that's affiliated with this guy, neighbors, friends, family. Of course, they're going to go through all of his computers and things of that nature. They already know, they hadn't told us, what his ties are to Florida. We just don't know yet.
Right.
And the reason why they'll hold that close to the chest is because they want the press to allow them to do their jobs so that they won't interfere with it. And get information wrong and put it out there. So they'll keep a lot of information close to the chest for that matter. But yeah, they're doing their due diligence right now as we speak.
Right, because we don't know right now if he's cooperating during this investigation, if he's answering their questions, if they found out from him why he did this. But they're going to want to question everyone that he knows to see what was happening in the past day, the past week, the past month. That maybe would cause him to do something like this. Maybe was he talking to someone, possibly about carrying this out. They're trying to gather any information that they can.
Yeah, and it's a long process. It's a long process, and sometimes we as a public get a little impatient because we want information. We want to know why and how and all these things, but it's a long process because you have to understand in the judicial system, there are so many technicalities that you can lose a case on, even though it looks plain, clear, and obvious. There are so many technicalities that can come into play. And what you want to do is you want to plug up those holes where the technicalities live so that they won't become a part of the process. So we just have to be patient, let the authorities do their job with the interviews and interrogations, with the background checks, with the checks with the family members and friends and neighbors, and let it play out.
And so according to the commanding general there on the base, he was an automated logistical specialist who had risen up to the ranks of sergeant. And NBC News is reporting that he's 28 years old and that he joined the military back in 2018. So that means about 7 years ago, around the age of 21, from 21 to 28, he's been in the military. NBC News reporting he's from Jacksonville. I've not seen a lot of information about him now that his name has been released. Usually in situations like this, we see a flood of information. And I'm frankly kind of surprised, if he is in fact from Jacksonville, that we've heard very little about who he is and his background.
Well, he's 28 years old. He's young.
Right.
He's young. He's not like a 35, 40-year-old that's got a lot of information out there. So he's young. Again, who knows what he's going through or what he went through leading up to this thing. Who knows what his ties are or was to Jacksonville. If it's confirmed for sure that he's from Jacksonville. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we know that he was arrested locally there in Liberty County for alleged drinking while driving, but his commanding officers, they didn't know about the incident, according to officials there. So it kind of makes you wonder, did someone maybe say something about that maybe that got brought up or what? But we know he was going through something.
Well, they probably found out when they started doing background on him. You know, nobody had to say anything. Once they recognized and identified him, they probably found that out. But just like in law enforcement, if you're a law enforcement officer, and it's similar to the military, and you have an issue with law enforcement, such as a DWI, DUI, you're required the following day, within 24 hours of returning to work, to report that information to your commanding officer or to your superior. He failed to do that, so he obviously intentionally withheld that because it didn't just happen yesterday. And he didn't have an opportunity to say anything about it. So he was obviously trying to hide whatever issues that he may have been going through at that particular time, and this was basically just the ultimate. He may have been spiraling. We don't know. He may have been spiraling out of control, and until it got to this point where he just said, "The heck with it. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do this horrific act." We don't know yet.
Yeah, and I know our reporters have been looking through documents trying to see if we can find the DUI records. And it appears it may have happened in the past month or so, maybe even 2 months ago. So we're still trying to figure out exactly when that happened.
Yeah, so you're looking at video earlier from Fort Stewart, where the lockdown as of now has been completely lifted. And for those of you who are just joining us, I kind of want to walk you through a timeline of how this mass shooting unfolded today at Fort Stewart, Georgia, about 45 miles from Savannah, Georgia. It was around 10:56 this morning when police got the initial reports of a possible shooting on that Army base. Then at 11:04, the base was put on a full lockdown. At 11:09, 5 minutes later, emergency medical teams got there to treat the wounded soldiers. We know 5 soldiers have been wounded. And then at 11:35, the suspected gunman is apprehended. However, we heard the commanding general say that the people, as soon as they saw the shooting start, they tackled the suspected shooter. So I'm not sure on the timeline there, but according to this timeline, that's when he was apprehended. At 12:10, the lockdown was lifted for the main area. And at 12:45, 3 Liberty County schools entered a soft lockdown just out of an abundance of caution. And then it was around 1:30 this afternoon that the shooter was identified as a male soldier. We now know that shooter, identified as a sergeant, that they say opened fire in his workplace on his co-workers. NBC News reporting that this sergeant is believed to be from Jacksonville.
And I'm just looking right now, Heather, and we just got confirmation actually from Liberty County from a lieutenant there that Mr. Raffert was indeed arrested and charged by the Georgia State Patrol on May 18th of this year.
Okay, and his commanding chain did not know about this DUI. So we know in May, arrested for a DUI.
Yeah, 2.5 months later, and he knows the protocol that you must report that because he would have received some type of disciplinary punishment as a result of that. Twice, one for the actual act itself if he was convicted of it, and 2 for not reporting it. So again, like I said, that could be a link to what happened today. He could have been spiraling out of control, and he could have been drinking, trying to, drowning in his sorrows, if you will, and it just led up to this. We don't know yet, and I'm speculating, but we'll see.
We are working to get his mugshot. We should have that any moment now, and we'll share that with you when we do receive it. We know that he has been taken into custody. Police working to learn the motive. Maybe they know it, maybe they don't. They have not released any motive publicly at this point. And I think that's the question everybody wants to know. Why and what could have been done to prevent something?
Well, they'll hold another news conference once they find that out and they want to share it. They may know it, like you said, they may know it right now, but they're not just going to spontaneously utter it and say, hey, okay, here's the reason why you did that. Let's continue the investigation. They'll hold a news conference because they don't want to just give out one piece of information. They want to be able to have the investigation progress to a certain point and then release more information. So as the investigation continues, we have to pack our patience and let them do it.
Yeah. And we want to know that, producer, say that again for us. The mugshot will be from his previous arrest, not DUI. Today, not what happened today. And so just mentioning that's all we know about him as far as anything that happened that was kind of out of character, because he had no disciplinary issues within the military. As far as we know, they had never had any issues or any mental health concerns about him. So this is just the only thing we know about him when we're trying to look for a motive. Sometimes you might hear when it comes to people who commit things like this, well, someone had noticed that they had issues in the past where they, kind of showed signs of aggressiveness or had some kind of mental health concerns. But as far as we know about this guy, we don't have a lot of information about him having any previous problems.
And this is his mugshot from his DUI arrest in Liberty County. That's where Fort Stewart is. Cornelius Radford, a sergeant with the Army, 28 years old. This is the mugshot when he was arrested back in May. We have now confirmed that. We understand, according to NBC News, they're reporting that he is from Jacksonville. We don't have that independently confirmed outside of NBC News, but we're working to get more information on that. But you're looking at the picture of the suspected shooter at Fort Stewart, Cornelius Radford. This is his mugshot from May. Now today, we understand that his co-workers tackled him and held him while police were able to get on the scene and quickly take him into custody. We don't know, Ken, we haven't heard if he was injured or any details on that as far as that goes, right?
As far as that goes, we have not, but there has not also been a report that he was transported to the hospital prior to being arrested. So that's usually indicated that he may be okay, didn't have to be transported. But the whole thing to me is ironic that he had no prior disciplinary issues. He had no prior anything that was negative in his file that we know of. And for this sort of thing to happen just kind of spontaneous, it just baffles me.
And this is actually not the first serious shooting incident to happen at Fort Stewart. According to NBC, an Army sergeant was actually killed at Fort Stewart back in 2022. So that's just, 3 years ago. Sergeant Nathan Hillman, he was a 30-year-old from Pennsylvania and an Afghan veteran. He died during a shooting on December 12th at Fort Stewart. Specialist Shay Wilson is facing a murder charge, and his case is still pending. So you would kind of think maybe after that happened, maybe they have more protocols in place when it comes to this. I don't know quite the details of this previous shooting yet, but unfortunately, this is not the first time something like this has happened.
It's not the first time, and you really can't predict when it's going to happen.
You can't.
You can only just prepare to react because you don't know when it's going to happen. If you knew when it's going to happen, you can stop it. You'll be proactive and you can stop it. A question was raised earlier, how can you stop it? You can't stop it. You can't stop it because you don't know. You just don't know, and it's just unfortunate it happens to be at the same base, you know. And this will be a sounding alarm for all bases all over the United States now as a result of this, especially when they said that he brought in a personal weapon. So you can expect some protocols to change and some affidavits to be signed and all this kind of stuff to happen as a result of this.
Ken, whenever we have a mass shooting, it always causes us to kind of step back and reflect. What are the lessons learned? Obviously, this just happened just a few hours ago, but you served in law enforcement for many, many years. When it comes to warning signs, and we hear the FBI and police say all the time, if you see something, say something. And so often in mass shootings, you talk to people who say, well, so-and-so said this, I didn't take anything seriously.
Right.
As a law enforcement expert, what are warning signs? Because like you said, it can happen anywhere. And as you're answering this question, this is a live look from our crew there outside of the trauma center where some of the soldiers are recovering. But as far as warning signs go, what can we learn? What should we be on the lookout for?
Heather, you kind of hit it early when we were interviewing a little bit earlier when you say you have to be cognizant of your surroundings as well as people that surround you. And that's not being paranoid, that's just being cognizant and aware of things that's going on around you, because Anthony and I could be close, but I can notice a sudden change in him, in his behavior, in the way he acts, in the way he's talking, things that he's doing. It might raise my suspicion that something may be going on with him. I should tell somebody about that, especially in the climate that we're living now, because I don't want Anthony to snap, particularly on me. So we should tell somebody that you might want to just notice what I'm noticing with Anthony and maybe approach a conversation with him just to see if there's anything there. It's sometimes hard to tell. It's sometimes hard to see the signs that's there. But if you notice any unusual behavior that you feel that's out of character, the climate that we're living in now, you need to say something to somebody so that, one, everybody be aware of it, and two, maybe there's something that can be done about it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we hear stories, the aftermath of the stories. I mean, we just had a 14-year-old boy in our community accused of killing his own parents earlier in the week. And it's situations like that, and you stand back and you say, how? And why? And sometimes you don't know. If you say something, it could stop and prevent something.
And once again, 28 years old. He had been in the military for about 7 years, promoted to sergeant. So this is someone he had obviously showed signs of doing well in the military to receive a promotion like that. And it just raises questions. Why did this happen? I know that's something we keep saying over and over again, but of course, the investigators are trying to figure out all that information right now.
You know, it's going to be interesting once investigators talk to his co-workers, because they may reveal that there was something going on, but nobody said anything.
You're right.
Or they say, well, we didn't see anything. We didn't notice any kind of behavior. So the co-workers are going to be the key. If Mr. Radford does not give a motive as to why he did that, the co-workers will be a key to that, whether or not they saw something, they detected something, or they sensed something that was going on with him. Did he confide with somebody that, you know, he may have had some issues or some personal problems or whatever? All those things, investigators are going to be seeking out that information, whether from Radford or from his co-workers.
And I think a big question I have is, was this something that was premeditated? Was this something that was planned? Or was this a reaction to something that happened?
Well, I would say that it was kind of planned because he had a personal weapon.
He had a personal weapon.
He didn't just take it just to have it on him, because he don't need it on a military base. You got guns everywhere. You got military police there. You got civilian police there as well. So as far as protection, that's one of the safest places you can be. So he obviously, in my opinion, he took the weapon with the intent of using it, and he did.
Yeah. We are hearing from a delivery truck driver who recounts how really everything just stopped this morning as Fort Stewart went into lockdown. Take a listen to what he shared.
Yeah, I guess the best way to describe it, being a truck driver for the 30 years I've been, it was reminiscent of what happened after 9/11. I was on the road then, and the same thing happened. The whole world just went quiet. It shut down. Nobody knew what was going on. In the few minutes it took for me to get from the delivery to that north gate where people who are stationed there would go to Savannah, and it was pretty active. There was a lot of people going out that gate, probably going to Savannah. Everything stopped. I was the first truck at that gate, and they just shut it down. And the people in the cars knew less than I did. I didn't know anything, neither did they. They just wouldn't let us out. And slowly they started turning them around. In an 18-wheeler, I couldn't do what they did, but I had to get out. They got mad that I got out of my truck. I couldn't figure out what to do. They had county law enforcement on the other side of the gate, base police on inside, but when I got out, they just told me to turn around. They had to stop the cars for me to turn around. I went back.
So that was a truck driver there who you heard was making a delivery on base when he was told to shelter in place because everything was going down. We've been mentioning this since this all happened, well, since the news conference when we found out for sure that all those soldiers, the 5 who were shot, will recover. So everyone injured in today's shooting at the base expected to recover. The good news throughout all of this. And there was a press briefing at 3:30 this afternoon when we found that all out. Let's listen.
Soldiers in the area that witnessed the shooting immediately and without hesitation tackled the soldier, subdued him, that allowed law enforcement to then take him into custody. I'm very confident in the security of this installation. We've got a great partnership with local law enforcement. As you can see here at our gates, we have armed guards in protective equipment. This one's a bit difficult. And we're going to have to determine how he was able to get a handgun to his place of duty.
Big question there to answer. And right now we want to show you the mugshot of the suspect, Cornelius Radford. He is a sergeant with the Army, 28 years old, an automatic logistics specialist there on base at Fort Stewart. Now, this is his mugshot when he was arrested back in May in Liberty County, Georgia. That's where Fort Stewart is, charged with driving under the influence. Again, he's 28 years old. NBC News is reporting that he is from Jacksonville, Florida. We're working to get more details and to confirm that, but he has been with the Army since 2018, so probably around the age 21, 22, he joined the Army, made his way up to the rank of sergeant, and then today, for reasons we do not know, he allegedly opened fire in his workplace on his co-workers, and they tackled him, subdued him, and he survived. He is in custody right now, being questioned by police. Those 5 soldiers who were shot, who were injured, taken to the hospital. A couple of them have had to undergo surgery, but the commanding general saying it appears that all of them are going to survive and that all of their family members have been notified.
And we have 2 crews there at Fort Stewart. We have our Zach Wilcox. He's actually there on base, well, a little bit outside the base there at one of the entrances, continuing to gather information. Our Christina Burgess, she's actually at the hospital right now. gathering information there, trying to see if there's any family members outside or anyone that she can speak with to find out more about the conditions of these soldiers who are there at the hospital. We know, once again, they're all stable at this time, but just to figure out exactly what's going on, we know some underwent surgery during the shooting. I don't know if it's possible, if we could go back out to Zach Wilcox. We will in just a moment. We're going to go back out to Zach, just kind of tell us what he's seeing there at the base right now.
Ken, you know, we have a lot of military bases here in Jacksonville, here in the First Coast area. When something like this happens and there is an incident on a base, something of this magnitude, are security levels usually amplified at all bases following a tragedy like this?
Not only are they amplified, but they're looked at again and again and again just to see how they will respond if this actually happened on their base. You know, they practice and they train for these sort of things to happen, and they cooperate with local law enforcement just like we saw today. So they prepare for it. But again, I can't stress it enough, you never know when it's going to happen. You never know when it's going to happen.
And they said during the news conference, actually, that they are pretty confident with their security there on base. We heard him just say that. But once again, this is something we can't predict. This can happen anywhere. Unfortunately, this happened on a military base, somewhere you would think maybe it wouldn't happen, but this is something, once again, that could happen anywhere. So they were not prepared for something like this to happen.
And you know, outside of the 5 soldiers that were injured, the biggest concern of that brigadier general is how did that weapon get in the workplace.
Yes, exactly.
That's his biggest concern. And he probably feels like he's been let down by somebody or some unit for him being able to bring that weapon inside. So he's going to get to the bottom of it.
Right, but just like, once again, as we mentioned earlier, usually when you enter a base, especially if you're a fellow soldier, you either have a tag or you just show your ID and they let you through. You know, this is one of your coworkers there. You don't suspect anything.
As Anthony mentioned, we do have crews spread out. Christina Burgess is on the scene outside of, I believe she's outside of Memorial Health, the Trauma One Center, where some of the soldiers who were shot were taken today. And we heard from a trauma surgeon just a little bit ago talking about just the resources they have in place when someone is brought there with an urgent need to one of those level 1 trauma centers. Christina, describe the scene where you are right now.
Well, yeah, guys, I just want to show you the lay of the land and what it looks like out here. So to my left, this road right here is where we've been seeing lots of ambulance come in and go to this emergency room. So this is where these 2 soldiers who were wounded on Fort Stewart's base were taken, right here under that emergency room sign. So since we've been out here, we've been seeing lots of activity. We did arrive after these soldiers were brought here, but since we've been here, we've been seeing that activity because, like you said, Heather, this is a level 1 trauma center. It's one that's located between Charleston, Jacksonville, and Macon. So they receive lots of patients, including those 2 soldiers today. We did hear from Dr. William Bromberg here that with this being a level 1 trauma center, his staff is ready to act and act fast. As soon as a patient is en route, they receive that call, and that's when staff starts to get ready. And as soon as that patient comes through the doors, they're ready to get them and take them to the operating room and treat them as quickly as possible. Now, we do know that those 2 soldiers that left from Fort Stewart, they rode in an ambulance ride that lasted around 30 minutes. We know that Fort Stewart is a military base, and right here at this trauma center, it's also in a military community in Savannah. So Dr. Bromberg says that they do take not high priority, but it is very important for them to treat our military personnel in the best way that they can. We'll continue to bring you more updates and coverage here in Savannah, Georgia. Reporting live, Christina Burgess, First Coast News on your side.
All right, Christina, thank you. And when we heard that surgeon talking just a little while ago, he got emotional when asked about, you know, is it different when you're treating members of our military? And he said, you know, you treat everyone to the highest level of care, but when it's a soldier, when it's someone who has signed up to serve our country, it hits a little bit differently. And he got emotional, he got choked up, and saying that at that level 1 trauma center, within 2 to 5 minutes, they can have all the blood for them, and with under 15 minutes, they can have them on the operating table. So they have the resources there, getting them quick, urgent care, the best care they can to help them have a swift recovery.
And right now, we don't have the names confirmed of the soldiers who were injured during today's shooting. I know a lot of you might be wondering about that. Maybe if we know the shooter, from what we're learning, it appears that he has a Jacksonville address, but we don't know if any of the injured, if they might be from our area. So I know you might have that question. We are working to try to get that information, but the military has not released that to us just yet. All we know is that they're all said to be stable right now. they're all going to recover, and we know some had to go through surgery. But we are continuing to get more information about those who were shot during all of this.
Ken, speak to the investigation, to what's happening now. You've got this happening on a military base, but we know the FBI and local law enforcement all working collaboratively to try and figure out how this happened and what can do to prevent it. But this is an investigation that's going to take days, weeks, months.
So picture a duck on the top of the water. He's just gliding.
Right.
Underneath there, his legs
just
are moving
paddling
real
away.
fast.
Yeah.
That's what's going on here with this investigation. On the surface, it seems like it's just cut and dry, and we got this, we got that. But there's a lot of moving parts going on underneath the surface that they're doing. People are traveling. People are finding individuals that they need to talk to. Investigators are going all out to get as much information about Rafford as they can. They're talking to Rafford. Hopefully he's cooperating and he's giving them the information that hopefully he's remorseful and he's just releasing all of this out of him to try to get closure on it for personal reasons or whatever. So all these things are going on simultaneously. It's a well-oiled machine based on what I've seen today, how they responded, how they reacted, how he was taken into custody so quick, and we'll wait and see what comes out of all of this.
Right, because as you mentioned earlier, this is a federal investigation,
right.
So there are going to be a lot of resources used to get to the bottom of this.
They will spare no expense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is a mugshot you're looking at. As we've been showing you, we got this just within the past few minutes. We have learned that he was previously arrested for driving under the influence there in Liberty County, Georgia, back in May. But what was interesting is the commanding general who was giving the press briefing at 3:30 this afternoon said his chain of command did not know he had been arrested for a DUI. If they had known that, I'm sure he would have faced disciplinary action, but he kept that hidden from them, and they apparently did not find out about it until after this shooting happened today, when they were looking into his past and what led up to this. And so did that play a role in any of this? We don't know the details, but he was arrested, and this is his mugshot. Obviously, it happened at his workplace, according to investigators.
Absolutely, and he wanted to hide it for a reason.
Yeah.
We don't know what that reason is, but he wanted to hide that information from his command for a reason. He wanted to hide the weapon that he smuggled in for a reason, and the reason we know now is to wreak havoc upon his co-workers. So he could be suffering from some type of anxiety or mental issues or whatever. All that'll come out because as Anthony said, they're not going to spare any expense with this investigation.
Right.
If they need to bring in psychologists or psychiatrists, professionals to come in to talk with him and try to get into his psyche and whatever, they're going to do that.
Right, and as soon as this all happened, we sent our Zach Wilcox up to Fort Stewart to gather more information for us. He's been out there for a while. Zach, just kind of tell us if you've learned anything new and just kind of what's happening there on the base.
Yeah, Anthony, I think I should start with the fact that you may see some flashing lights, you may hear some sirens behind me here, and that's because it appears there's been some sort of car accident right in front of the front gate to get onto Fort Stewart. So it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with the shooter situation from earlier, but in case you see that or hear that, I'll step out here because there's a long line of cars that are trying to make their way out, but the gate has been reopened. And since the gate was reopened, we went up to the visitor center just before you sent it out to talk to us here, and we talked with a couple of people who were checking in there. We talked with one woman who mentioned that she's on the base and she was stationed there earlier, and she spent several hours in lockdown inside. She doesn't necessarily work anywhere near where the shooting happened, but she talked about how scary it was to have that going on and not really know what exactly was happening other than knowing that there was some sort of shooter situation happening. So she was able to get off the base. She was going back on now, but relieved that she was finally able to continue with her day. We also talked with another man who mentioned he had no idea there was a shooting today. He was checking in to get a visitor badge, mentioned he did 15 years in the military, and talked about the fact that he actually intentionally left his gun at home because he did not want to be bringing a gun onto a military base because of how hard it is to get through the security process and so much explaining to do. So he was surprised to learn that it's believed that this was a personal gun that was used for the shooting because of how hard, in his experience, it's been to bring a personal gun onto a base. So was shocked to hear that there'd been a shooting here, mentioned that his wife had never been to a base, so he wanted to take her by just to give her a look and maybe spend the night on the base. and had no idea that there had been this shooting and that it had been locked down for hours. So it's certainly just coincidental that they drove up from Gainesville and just happened to be stopping by the base after all of this happened. But it was interesting to hear him talk about his own personal experience with trying to bring a personal handgun onto a base. And we know that is one thing that the Commander General rather mentioned that they're looking into, is how exactly this personal gun was able to make it onto the base to begin with before the shooting even happened. But just figured I'd give you a little lay of the land here as to what we're seeing here at the front gate. But again, this whole long line of cars, all the sirens, all the flashing lights seem to be for a car crash not related to the shooting that happened here about 5 hours ago today. At Fort Stewart, Zach Wilcox, First Coast News, on your side.
And Zach, I want to ask you a little bit about that. So I know you just mentioned this car accident. Since you've been there, how have they been getting people on and off base? Does it appear to be normal, or have they been have things been moving slowly? I don't know if you can really answer that question, but just what have you observed traffic-wise there?
Yeah, Anthony, when we first got here, it was about 10-15 minutes after they lifted the lockdown and reopened the front gate. So there was a lineup of cars trying to get their way in. They just started matriculating in, so it seems like people were held up for about 3 hours today. That lockdown from around 11 until 2. I do want to point out that where we are is about as far away on the base as you can be from where the shooting actually happened. They have lifted all of those lockdowns now, but one of the PAOs actually mentioned that to get to the gate where that happened, where the shooting happened, you have to almost go through this gate, out another one, and then re-enter the base. So it's kind of a complicated thing. 5-6 mile long drive, takes about 10 minutes to get through, just the sheer size of this base. But when we first got here, there was a little bit of a line of cars trying to make their way in. Now we have this long line of cars trying to make their way out, as a lot of folks are ending what's been a very hectic day, especially with this car crash on top of everything else.
All right, Zach Wilcox live for us in Fort Stewart, Georgia, where just before 11 o'clock this morning, a sergeant, according to the commanding general, accused of opening fire in his workplace on his co-workers. The ramifications of that, 5 soldiers shot this morning. They have been taken to the hospital where they are recovering. They are expected to all recover, and that suspected alleged shooter is in police custody.
Right, a 28-year-old who was an automated logistical specialist, and he was assigned to the 2nd Brigade Combat Team there at Fort Stewart. He had no previous deployments there. So once again, our team continuing to gather information, including more information about his ties, possibly here to Jacksonville, to the state of Florida. And as we continue to also learn more about the investigation, what they're asking him right now, what are they trying to figure out, what caused him to do this, our team is staying on top of this story. And right now we are actually preparing to get ready for our normal newscast, First Coast News at 5, which is going to start in about 3 minutes or so.
Ken Jefferson, we want to thank you for your expertise. We'll continue to hear from you. And the big headline, NBC News reporting the suspected shooter is from Jacksonville. More on First Coast News at 5.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with First Coast News and First Coast News Plus. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage with First Coast News and First Coast News Plus.
We have new details about a heavy police presence in Jacksonville Beach.
Driver fired gunshots along the interstate today, prompting a police chase.
Breaking overnight, police are investigating an officer-involved shooting.
Breaking news, a major crash on I-95.
Routine controlled burn got out of control. First Coast News was the only station there.
Stream extended coverage on First Coast News Plus.
Nothing breeds competition and camaraderie in a community like sports. Your First Coast Sports team understands that. We go beyond the X's and O's, straight to the heart of the game, where the real stories are told.
The First Coast News Plus TV app, streaming 24/7. Local news from the team you trust on your time. Track how the weather will impact your day. All the local news you need. First Coast News Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free.
Well, I would love to say thank you to Anthony.
Thank you times a million. Thank you for listening to me and taking me seriously.
In the military, the biggest form of respect is a salute. So we salute you and we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Anthony, from the bottom of my heart, you are a great person.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you.
Anthony was so kind as to go to the city manager, find out what the problem was.
It's great that there's someone that's really true to their word and can really help with what they say they can. I have been through hell, and Anthony just was the first person to reach his hand out and help me.
If I had to do it all over again, Anthony would be my first call.
If you live in a small town of Waycross, Georgia, home of the Okefenokee Swamp, you just ask Anthony and he's gonna come and he's gonna deal with it.
That's right.
Just having Anthony Austin on your side, that's a big deal.
It is a weather impact alert day on the First Coast.
We are tracking rain all across our area.
Have the umbrella in the back seat, the rain jacket ready to go.
More rain is on the way. Another wave is coming out of the west.
We have live coverage tonight from our team on the impact of today's rain.
And we'll be timing out that storm and potential severe weather risk.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on First Coast News Plus. Sponsored by AC Designs.
Trust is the fabric of what we do.
You know you're going to get authentic, trustworthy stories when you turn on the news every night.
Every story, every newscast. This is the team working every day to earn your trust.
Streaming on First Coast News Plus. This is First Coast News, on your side. We begin with breaking news.
First at 5, terrifying moments at a U.S. Army base today. A sergeant accused of opening fire on his fellow soldiers at Fort Stewart in Georgia.
5 soldiers were shot. Everyone is expected to survive. We're going to have team coverage in just a moment, but right now you're looking across the street from our studios because we have a severe thunderstorm warning for much of the First Coast. So we're checking the skies right now. We want to check in with Chief Meteorologist Lewis Turner.
Good evening, guys. Yeah, very busy evening for a very compact group here with the severe thunderstorm warning. So you can see where all the lightning is located, where this yellow box is. I'm going to take the lightning off, but I do just want to emphasize tons of lightning strikes here over the last 10-15 minutes or so. This is the severe thunderstorm warning, including Mandarin, kind of the northern extent, so very southern Duval County into northern St. John's.